Long before cities, before writing, before the gods of Olympus or the God of Abraham, humanity shared a single cathedral, the sky above. Our earliest ancestors did not merely glance upward. They gazed with a sense of reverence so profound it shaped their entire understanding of existence. They saw the sun not as a ball of plasma, but as a life-giving deity. The moon was not a rocky satellite, but a cyclical goddess of time and mystery. The stars were not distant suns, but the campfires of ancestors or the brushstrokes of divine storytellers. This was the first sky religion, a pan-global, primal faith that saw the cosmos as alive, sacred, and intimately connected to human fate. It was a spiritual framework so universal that its echoes can be found in every corner of the ancient world, from the steppes of Siberia to the temples of Peru. And then, somehow, it vanished, not with a bang but with a slow fade into history, leaving behind only fragments of its once unified vision, yet its symbols never truly left us. They linger in the corners of our modern world, hidden in plain sight in the spires of our cathedrals, the designs of our flags, the metaphors of our language, and the deep architecture of our dreams. This is the story of that disappearance, a mystery spanning millennia, and the astonishing persistence of celestial icons that continue to shape our lives in ways we seldom recognize. Over the next while, we'll journey together across time and culture, tracing the rise and fall of humanity's original faith. We'll explore why a belief system so powerful and pervasive could gradually erode under the pressures of politics, environment, and changing worldviews. And most compellingly, we'll uncover how symbols like the sacred tree, the solar disk, and the cosmic axis Mundi have transcended their original meanings to become timeless elements of human expression. By the end of this exploration, you won't just look at the sky the same way again. You'll begin to see it as a living archive, a canvas of forgotten myths that still speak to us if we know how to listen. To understand the world's oldest faith, we must first step into the minds of our most ancient ancestors. Picture a human standing on a vast, open plain tens of thousands of years ago. There are no city lights, no glowing screens, only the immense, overwhelming dome of the night sky, glittering with a brilliance we can scarcely imagine today. This was not a passive spectacle, it was a living, breathing, divine presence. The daily journey of the sun was a story of death and rebirth. The shifting phases of the moon dictated the rhythm of time. The constellations were not random patterns but a celestial map of myths, morals, and guidance. This pervasive, intuitive reverence for the heavens is what scholars refer to as the first sky religion. It wasn't a single organized doctrine with a holy book or a central pope, but rather a foundational layer of human spirituality, a shared understanding that the cosmos itself was sacred, conscious, and intimately involved in the drama of life on Earth. This belief system was truly global, emerging independently wherever humans gathered. In Mesopotamia, the sky was Anu, the supreme god whose domain was the firmament. For the ancient Egyptians, the sky was the goddess Nut, her star-studded body arched over the earth. Across the Atlantic, the Native American Pawnee people oriented their entire society around the stars, building their lodges in alignment with celestial patterns and viewing the morning star as a chief deity. In South America, the Inca saw the Milky Way not as a distant galaxy, but as a celestial river connecting the world of the living to the world of the spirits. Despite the vast oceans and continents separating these cultures, their core spiritual impulse was strikingly similar, a profound awe for the sky above. The renowned historian of religion Mircea Eliade described this universal feeling as a recognition of the sacred and the profane. He argued that for ancient humanity, the sky inherently revealed the transcendent, the absolute, and the limitless, serving as the ultimate hierophany, a manifestation of the divine. This wasn't just about worship, it was about finding order in the chaos. By observing the predictable cycles of the sun, moon, and stars, our ancestors saw a cosmic blueprint for justice, balance, and harmony. At the heart of this religion were three core practices that blended the spiritual with the practical. First was solar and lunar worship. The sun was universally venerated as the great life-giver, a being of immense power, justice, and masculine energy. Its daily victory over darkness and its annual retreat and return provided a powerful narrative of resilience and hope. Lunar worship, conversely, was tied to the mysteries of the feminine, the subconscious, and the cyclical nature of time, of birth, growth, decay, and regeneration. The moon governed tides, menstrual cycles, and the planting of crops, making it a deeply personal and practical deity. Second were the intricate star myths. Every culture wove its heroes, animals, and moral lessons into the constellations. The story of Orion, the hunter chasing the Pleiades sisters, appears in variations from ancient Greece to Aboriginal Australia, serving as both an astronomical guide and a cultural teaching tool. Finally, celestial navigation was a spiritual practice. Travelers, whether Polynesian sailors guided by star paths or desert nomads following the moon, were engaging in a form of communion with the divine. The sky was their map, their calendar, and their church all at once. This deep, intertwined relationship with the heavens formed the bedrock of human civilization, a universal cathedral without walls that united all of early humanity under a single, starry roof. Its disappearance would not be a simple event, but a slow unraveling that makes the persistence of its symbols all the more extraordinary. If the sky was the cathedral of the first sky religion, then the Axis Mundi was its central altar, the sacred point where heaven and earth met. This profound concept of a cosmic pillar, a world center, or a divine ladder exists in virtually every ancient culture, forming a foundational pillar of the celestial faith. It represents more than just a location. It is the very conduit through which the divine energy of the cosmos flows into our world, the axis around which all of reality spins. Imagine a great, invisible tree whose roots dig deep into the underworld, whose trunk is the solid earth we walk upon, and whose branches reach up into the highest heavens, cradling the sun, moon, and stars. This is the Axis Mundi. It is the ultimate symbol of connection, a bridge between the human and the divine, the mortal and the eternal, the chaos of the world and the perfect order of the cosmos. We find stunning examples of this concept across the globe, each culture expressing this universal idea through its own unique mythology and landscape. In Hinduism, this axis is Mount Meru, a magnificent golden mountain that stands at the very center of the universe. It is said to be the navel of creation, around which all the planets revolve, and its peak pierces the heavens, serving as the home of the gods. The entire cosmology of ancient India was built around this sacred center. Similarly, in Norse mythology, the great world tree Yggdrasil serves this same function. This immense ash tree connects the 9 realms of existence. Its roots tap into the wells of fate and wisdom in the underworld. Its trunk is the world of humans, Midgard, and its highest branches extend into Asgard, the realm of the gods. The well-being of Yggdrasil was synonymous with the well-being of the cosmos itself, but this wasn't just a concept for grand mythologies, it was a tangible reality for many indigenous cultures. Numerous Native American tribes, for instance, erected sacred poles at the center of their villages or during ceremonies. The sun dance ceremony of the Plains peoples, centered around a ritually prepared tree, is a powerful enactment of this belief, creating a temporary axis mundi to facilitate prayer, healing, and communication with the spirit world. The function of this symbol was multifaceted. Primarily, it was a point of communication. Shamans, priests, and heroes were believed to be able to journey along this axis, ascending to the sky to gain wisdom, plead with the gods, or bring back blessings for their people. This is where the insights of the mythologist Joseph Campbell become so illuminating. He saw the axis mundi as the central stage for the monomyth, or the hero's journey, a universal story pattern found in all cultures. The hero, Campbell argued, often begins their adventure at the world tree or the sacred mountain, the familiar center of their world. They then cross a threshold into the unknown, frequently by ascending or descending this cosmic axis, to face trials and gain revelation. Their return with a boon for humanity is only possible because of this connection between worlds. The axis mundi provided order in a potentially chaotic universe. By establishing a center, it gave meaning to direction. Everything could be oriented in relation to this sacred point. It transformed the impersonal vastness of the cosmos into a structured, navigable, and spiritually charged map. The persistence of this symbol, from the poles of ancient shamans to the spires of modern cathedrals, demonstrates a deep, hardwired human need to feel connected to something greater than ourselves, to find a center in the seeming chaos of existence. Of all the celestial bodies revered in the first sky religion, none commanded devotion quite like the sun. While the moon governed the hidden rhythms of life and the stars told stories in the night, the sun was the undeniable sovereign of the day, a life-giver, a moral arbiter, and the ultimate symbol of resurrection. Its daily journey from east to west was a cosmic drama played out for all to see, a heroic battle against the forces of darkness, a sacrificial death each evening, and a triumphant rebirth with every dawn. This cycle made the sun the most visible and dependable testament to the promise of renewal, a divine engine of creation that ancient cultures from every corner of the world felt compelled to honor. In ancient Egypt, this veneration reached its zenith with the sun god Ra. For the Egyptians, the sun was the very source of life and order, or Mat. Ra was believed to travel across the sky in a solar bark, fighting off the serpent of chaos, Apophis, each night to ensure the world would see another day. This mythology was so central that pharaohs claimed direct descent from Ra, cementing their divine right to rule. But perhaps the most fascinating and radical expression of Egyptian solar worship emerged under the pharaoh Akhenaten. He attempted to overhaul the entire polytheistic system, declaring the sun disk itself, the Aten, as the one supreme god. Art from this period shows the Aten not as an anthropomorphic figure, but as a radiant disk with rays ending in hands, bestowing the Ankh, the symbol of life, upon the royal family. This was a move towards a form of monotheism centered purely on the sun's life-giving power, a brief but profound moment in history where the abstract symbol of the sun disk itself became the sole object of worship. Across the Mediterranean, in Mesopotamia, the sun was personified as Shamash, the god of justice and truth. Unlike the distant and majestic Ra, Shamash was a god deeply involved in the affairs of humanity. As the one who sees all, his light was believed to illuminate not just the physical world, but also the shadows of deceit and injustice. Hammurabi's famous law code, one of the earliest known sets of written laws, is depicted on a stone stele showing the king receiving the laws directly from Shamash, directly linking solar authority with divine moral order. The sun here was not just a creator, It was a judge, a witness, and the ultimate guarantor of fairness in human society. This pattern of solar deification repeats itself across the globe with astonishing consistency. In the Andes, the Inca Empire was literally the land of the four quarters, organized around the divine presence of Inti, the sun god. The Sopa Inca, the emperor, was considered the living son of Inti, and the entire economy, calendar, and religious life of the empire revolved around the sun's cycles. The most important temple in the empire, the Coricancha in Cusco, was sheathed in gold to reflect the sun's glory and housed mummified ancestors in a direct line of solar descent. Similarly, in Japan, the sun goddess Amaterasu is not only the progenitor of the imperial family, but also the most important deity in the Shinto pantheon, her emblem, the rising sun, forever embedded in the national flag. The depth of this ancient devotion is etched into the very landscape of our planet through monumental architecture. Long before the pyramids or the Parthenon, our ancestors were building structures in precise alignment with the sun's movements. The megalithic tomb of Newgrange in Ireland, older than both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids, features a narrow roof box perfectly designed so that the rays of the winter solstice sunrise would illuminate its inner chamber, flooding the realm of the dead with the light of rebirth. Stonehenge itself, with its massive heel stone marking the summer solstice sunrise, stands as a testament to a sophisticated understanding of the solar cycle. These were not merely calendars, they were cathedrals. They were places where the community could gather to participate in the cosmic drama, to ensure the sun's return, and to reaffirm their connection to the divine source of all life. The sun disk, the simplest and most powerful symbol of this belief, has proven to be one of humanity's most enduring images. It transcends its original religious context to speak a universal language of power, vitality, and hope. We see it in the halos of Christian saints, a direct artistic inheritance from the radiate crowns of solar deities like Apollo and Sol Invictus. We see it on the flags of nations from Argentina to Kazakhstan, representing a new dawn of freedom and national identity. We see it in the logos of countless corporations, from energy companies to insurance firms, subtly tapping into that deep-seated cultural association of the sun with reliability, strength, and benevolent power. Our modern summer solstice celebrations and even holidays like Christmas, which co-opted the timing of pagan solar festivals, are living fossils of this ancient reverence. This persistence is more than mere coincidence. It is a whisper from our deepest past, a subconscious cultural memory that continues to draw power from that primal, life-giving orb in the sky. While the sun ruled the day with unwavering authority, the moon governed the night with a more subtle, mysterious power. Its presence was not constant but cyclical, a luminous shape that waxed and waned, disappeared entirely, and then miraculously returned. This ever-changing nature made the moon the ultimate symbol of transformation, a celestial body deeply intertwined with the hidden rhythms of life, death, and rebirth. In the cosmology of the first sky religion, if the sun represented the conscious mind, logic, power, and outward action, the moon embodied the subconscious, intuition, emotion, and the deep, internal tides of the human psyche. It was predominantly, though not exclusively, associated with feminine divinity, presiding over the mysteries of creation, fertility, and the passage of time itself. Across the ancient world, cultures personified the moon with a rich pantheon of deities, each reflecting this core set of lunar attributes. In Mesopotamia, one of the cradles of civilization, the moon god Sin, also known as Nana, was a deity of immense importance. He was depicted as a wise old man with a long flowing beard, often shown resting on a crescent moon like a celestial boat sailing through the night sky. The city of was his primary cult center, and its massive ziggurat was dedicated to his worship. Sin was not merely a night light, he was the divine measurer of time. The Mesopotamian calendar was strictly lunar, with each month beginning at the first sighting of the new crescent moon. This system organized everything from religious festivals and market days to the terms of contracts and loans, embedding the moon's cycle into the very fabric of civic and economic life. In the Vedic traditions of ancient India, the moon god Chandra held a similarly vital role. He is described as young, beautiful, and radiant, riding across the sky in a chariot pulled by 10 white horses. Chandra is directly linked to the plant world. It is believed that the moon's rays contain the nectar of life, which nourishes all vegetation and, by extension, all living beings. He is also the lord of the mind and the senses, governing emotions and mental stability. This connection between the moon's phases and states of mind is a concept that persists even today in words like lunatic, derived from the Latin luna, reflecting an ancient belief in the moon's power to influence mental faculties. The practical applications of lunar knowledge were as profound as the spiritual ones. Ancient timekeeping was, in essence, the observation of celestial rhythms. The approximately 29.5-day cycle of the moon provided a perfect natural clock. From the Babylonians to the Celts, societies used the lunar cycle to create calendars that dictated the timing of agriculture, hunting, and religious ceremonies. The Islamic calendar remains purely lunar to this day. This was not arbitrary. The moon's influence on the earth is tangible. The gravitational pull that creates the ocean's tides was also believed to affect moisture in the soil and even the fluids within the human body. Planting crops according to the moon's phase was standard practice, with the waxing moon thought to be optimal for growth and the waning moon for pruning and harvesting. This wasn't mere superstition. It was a sophisticated form of early environmental science, a way of aligning human activity with the natural world's pulse. Archaeological evidence abounds with lunar symbolism. Countless artifacts from the Neolithic period onward feature crescent shapes, from carved amulets to pottery decorations. The famous Venus of Lossal, a Paleolithic limestone carving over 20,000 years old, depicts a woman holding a bison horn carved with 13 notches, a number closely associated with the lunar and menstrual cycles, suggesting a deep, prehistoric link between the moon, femininity, and the counting of time. These artifacts are silent witnesses to a universal human recognition of the moon's significance. The psychoanalyst Carl Jung offered a powerful framework for understanding why these lunar symbols feel so innate and persistent. He proposed the theory of the collective unconscious, a reservoir of universal, archaic symbols and patterns inherited from our ancestral past, which he called archetypes. The moon, for Jung, is a primary archetype of the feminine principle, which he termed the anima. It represents the irrational, the receptive, and the world of dreams and intuition. Jung suggested that these celestial symbols emerge spontaneously in the dreams and myths of people across all cultures because they are fundamental building blocks of the human psyche. He might argue that when an ancient artisan carved a crescent moon onto an amulet, or when a modern person feels a sense of peace under a full moon, they are both tapping into the same deep, archetypal layer of human experience. The moon, therefore, is more than a rock in the sky. It is a permanent fixture in the internal landscape of humanity, a symbol that continues to illuminate the hidden corners of our subconscious. This deep-seated psychological connection ensured that even as the first sky religion faded, the moon's symbolic power was seamlessly woven into the fabric of daily life, from the calendars that organized society to the myths that gave it meaning. While the sun and moon provided the fundamental rhythm of day and month, it was the silent, fixed patterns of the stars that offered humanity its first grand narrative canvas. On a clear, dark night far from the glow of modern cities, the night sky reveals not a random scattering of lights, but a sprawling, interconnected storybook. For the practitioners of the first sky religion, constellations were far more than pretty patterns. They were divine maps, celestial storyboards, and a moral compass written in light. They served a dual purpose, providing practical, navigational guidance for travelers and farmers, while simultaneously encoding the foundational myths, laws, and spiritual beliefs of a culture. This celestial storytelling was a universal human endeavor, a way of projecting our deepest fears, hopes, and values onto the vast, impersonal dome of the night, transforming it into a familiar and meaningful landscape. Consider the constellation of Orion, one of the most recognizable patterns in the heavens. In ancient Greek mythology, Orion was a mighty, boastful hunter who claimed he could kill every animal on Earth. The Earth goddess Gaia, angered by his hubris, sent a small but deadly scorpion to defeat him. The gods, upon their death, placed them in the sky as the constellations Orion and Scorpius, forever chasing each other across the celestial sphere but never meeting, a perpetual reminder of the dangers of arrogance and the fact that even the greatest can be felled by the smallest of foes. This is a classic Greek moral tale of hubris and nemesis. Yet, travel to the other side of the world, to the Aboriginal cultures of Australia, and you find a completely different story for the same set of stars. Here, the stars of Orion's belt are not part of a hunter but are three brothers in a canoe. In one widespread narrative, the brothers were expert fishermen who dared to hunt in a forbidden stretch of water, angering the sun woman, Uria Pranili. As punishment, a waterspout lifted their canoe into the sky where they remain forever, a warning against breaking sacred tribal law. The same stars, the same pattern, but two entirely different cultural lessons etched into the night. This pattern of shared stars but unique stories repeats with the Pleiades star cluster, often called the Seven Sisters. In Greek myth, they are the daughters of the Titan Atlas, placed in the sky to escape the relentless pursuit of the hunter Orion. Their appearance marked the start of the sailing season in the Mediterranean. For the Native American Kiowa tribe of the Great Plains, the same tight cluster of stars is a different kind of refuge. Their legend tells of 7 sisters and their brother who were attacked by giant bears. The boy fought bravely to protect his sisters, and the Great Spirit, moved by his courage and their plight, placed them all in the sky for safety. The boy became the bright star Aldebaran, and the sisters became the Pleiades, with the boy forever guarding them from the bears, represented by the constellation Ursa Major. Across these traditions, the stars provided a fixed, reliable stage upon which the most important cultural values, respect for the gods, the importance of family, the consequences of breaking taboos, could be performed for every generation. The practical application of this stellar knowledge was nothing short of genius. For the Polynesian voyagers who settled the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, stars were not just stories, they were a literal highway. They developed a system of star path navigation, memorizing the precise rising and setting points of hundreds of stars on the horizon. A navigator would know that to reach a specific island, they must keep their canoe pointed at the point where a certain star rose each evening. As that star climbed too high, they would transition to the next star in the sequence, effectively island hopping across the heavens. This required an immense, encyclopedic knowledge passed down orally through generations, turning the entire night sky into a 3-dimensional nautical chart. On land, the stars dictated the agricultural calendar. The heliacal rising of a star, Its first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of invisibility was a critical signal. In ancient Egypt, the heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star, coincided with the annual flooding of the Nile River, the event that rejuvenated the entire kingdom's farmland. This celestial event was so vital it marked the beginning of their new year. We are still uncovering the profound depth of this ancient astronomical sophistication through archaeology. The magnificent Lascaux cave paintings in France, estimated to be over 17,000 years old, feature a stunning array of animals, but some researchers, like Dr. Michael Rappingluck, have proposed that a specific grouping of a bull, a strange birdman, and a rhinoceros may actually represent the summer triangle of stars Vega, Deneb, and Altair, with the bull's eye corresponding to the bright star Aldebaran. If true, this suggests a symbolic representation of the cosmos dating back to the Paleolithic era. On a grander architectural scale, many ancient temples are precisely aligned with celestial events. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned with near-perfect precision to the cardinal directions. The famous air shafts inside the pyramid point directly toward the pole star and the belt of Orion, suggesting a deliberate cosmic connection meant to facilitate the pharaoh's soul's journey to the stars. The Maya city of Chichen Itza features the Pyramid of El Castillo, designed so that during the equinoxes, the interplay of sunlight and shadow creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the staircase, a representation of the feathered serpent god Kukulkan descending from the heavens. This innate human desire to find meaning in the stars connects our ancient ancestors directly to modern scientists and dreamers. The astronomer Carl Sagan beautifully articulated this continuity when he wrote, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." He often spoke of how our origins are literally in the stars, that the atoms that make up our bodies were forged in the fiery hearts of distant suns and scattered across the galaxy by supernova. That profound scientific truth echoes the intuitive, spiritual understanding of the first sky religion, that we are not separate from the cosmos but an intimate part of it. The stories may have changed from myths of hunters and sisters to narratives of nuclear fusion and galactic evolution, but the core impulse remains the same, a deep, awe-filled curiosity about our place in the universe. This timeless storytelling power of the stars, their ability to guide both our physical journeys and our search for meaning, makes their gradual fade from the center of our spiritual lives one of history's most intriguing transitions. But who were the individuals tasked with reading this celestial script, with mediating between humanity and the vastness of the cosmos? In the framework of the first sky religion, the most vital societal role was not that of a warrior or a king, but of the sky watcher, the priest, the shaman, the seer who possessed the specialized knowledge to interpret the divine language of the heavens. These figures served as the essential bridge, the human conduit through which the will of the sky gods was translated into guidance for daily life. Their authority did not come from physical force or hereditary claim alone, but from a perceived mastery of the celestial cycles that governed everything from the harvest to the fate of empires. They were the original scientists, theologians, and leaders rolled into one, and their influence was absolute because they alone could answer the most pressing questions of their people: when to plant, when to marry, when to go to war, and how to appease the angry gods when the sky itself seemed to turn against them. The duties of these celestial intermediaries were as varied as they were critical. Their year was punctuated by grand public rituals aligned with the solar cycle. The summer and winter solstices were not mere astronomical events. They were moments of high drama and spiritual necessity. At Stonehenge, Druidic priests likely presided over ceremonies at midwinter, pleading for the sun's return as it reached its lowest ebb on the horizon. In the Americas, the ancestral Pueblones at places like Choco Canyon designed great kivas and petroglyphs to mark the solstices, with the sun dagger phenomenon on Fajada, but serving as a precise solar calendar, likely activated by a shaman to confirm the turning of the seasons for the entire community. But their work was also one of constant, vigilant observation. They tracked the phases of the moon to set the dates for festivals and markets. They monitored the wandering planets, which many cultures viewed as gods themselves on their own mysterious journeys. And they watched for omens, unpredictable, terrifying events like comets, meteor showers, and especially eclipses. In ancient China, the court astronomers of the Han Dynasty had a sacred duty to predict eclipses accurately. Failure could be interpreted as a disconnect from the mandate of heaven and could cost them their heads. When an eclipse occurred, Babylonian letter 1, E6 DUPS Hachek Ar Enuma Anu Enlil, the scribes of the celestial omen series would perform elaborate rituals to appease the gods and protect the king, whom they believed was personally threatened by such events. Their ability to, over generations, predict the rough timing of eclipses based on recorded cycles cemented their power and mystique, making them indispensable advisors to the throne. This granted them a form of power that was both spiritual and profoundly political. In Mesopotamia, the astrologer priests were among the most educated and influential members of society. They lived in the temple complexes of ziggurats, which were themselves artificial mountains designed to bring them closer to the sky gods they served. Their detailed observations, recorded on countless clay tablets, were used to advise the king on matters of state. If the moon was haloed on a certain night, it might be an omen against launching a military campaign. If Mars was particularly bright, it might signal coming unrest. The king's decisions were deeply entwined with this celestial council. Similarly, among the Druids of Celtic Europe, their knowledge of astronomy was a closely guarded secret that set them apart as the intellectual and spiritual elite. The Roman historian Tacitus noted that the Druids read the future in the sky and the flight of birds, and their authority was such that they could halt a battle between tribes by stepping between the opposing lines. Their power flowed directly from their unique role as the sole interpreters of the sky's will. This immense authority, however, contained the seeds of its own decline. As historian of religion Karen Armstrong notes in her work, the Axial Age, beginning around the 8th century BCE, saw a profound shift in human spirituality across the globe, a movement from the external and the visible to the internal and the invisible. There was a growing emphasis on individual morality, compassion, and inner faith, often in contrast to the external, ritual-based power of the temple priesthoods. The sky religion's strength was its predictability. The sun always rose, the seasons always turned, but its weakness was its inability to adequately explain chaos, a devastating drought, a lost war, a plague. When the Sky Watchers' rituals failed to prevent catastrophe, their authority was inevitably called into question. New spiritual figures, prophets, philosophers, and founders of Earth-centric faiths like Buddhism, Judaism, and Greek philosophy began to offer different answers. They spoke of a moral law that resided within the human heart, of a covenant with a single God that was not dependent on correctly reading the stars, or of logical principles that govern the universe. This was a fundamental transfer of authority. The divine was becoming less about observing the external motions of the heavens and more about cultivating an internal state of being. The Sky Watcher, once the indispensable link to the gods, was gradually being replaced by the scribe, the rabbi, the monk, and the philosopher, figures whose power derived from texts, moral teachings, and personal piety, not from celestial cycles. This erosion of their central role was a quiet but monumental revolution. setting the stage for the deeper environmental and political upheavals that would ultimately seal the fate of the first sky religion. For the ancient world, the divine drama of the sky was never just a matter of abstract faith. It was the essential, practical engine of survival itself. The first sky religion provided humanity with its first and most reliable almanac, a celestial clockwork that dictated the rhythms of planting, growth, and harvest. By carefully observing the heavens, our ancestors could predict the changing of the seasons, the arrival of life-giving rains, and the flooding of great rivers. This wasn't merely astronomy, it was a form of sacred agriculture, a partnership with the cosmos where correct ritual and precise timing were believed to directly influence the fertility of the earth. The sky gods were not distant tyrants to be feared. They were benevolent partners who provided the signals essential for the community's prosperity. This deep, practical integration of celestial cycles into the very mechanics of daily life is a key reason why the symbols of this religion became so deeply entrenched in human culture. They were literally a matter of life and death, woven into the annual struggle for food and security. One of the most stunning examples of this celestial partnership comes from ancient Egypt, a civilization utterly dependent on the mood of a single river. Each year, the Nile would flood, spreading a layer of rich, fertile silt across its valley and delta, creating the conditions to grow the crops that fed the kingdom. But the timing of this flood was everything. If farmers planted too early, their seeds would be washed away. If they planted too late, the soil would be too dry. The Egyptians needed a reliable signal, and they found it not on earth but in the sky. They noticed that the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, its first appearance on the eastern horizon just before dawn after a period of invisibility, consistently occurred just before the Nile's annual inundation began. In the Egyptian calendar, this event marked the start of the new year and the season of Akhit, or inundation. The star Sirius, which they called Soptit, was personified as a goddess who was the partner of the Star, the constellation we know as Orion. The return of Soptit was seen as a divine trigger, a celestial event that caused the Nile to overflow its banks. Priests would carefully monitor the horizon, and the moment Soptit was sighted, it would set in motion a cascade of religious festivals and practical agricultural activities. This direct, observable correlation between a specific star and the most vital event of the year powerfully reinforced the idea that the sky was a conscious, benevolent force intimately involved in human welfare. The sky was not just holy, it was helpful. Across the Atlantic Ocean, the Maya civilization of Mesoamerica developed an equally sophisticated and sacred relationship between the heavens and their primary crop, maize. Maize was more than just food for the Maya. It was the substance from which the gods had created humanity itself. Its successful cultivation was therefore a religious duty, a reenactment of creation, and it was guided by the movements of the planet Venus. The Maya were meticulous astronomers, and they tracked Venus with incredible precision, noting its cycles as both the morning star and the evening star. They associated Venus, which they called No-Ek, or the Great Star, with their god Kukulkan, the feathered serpent deity of agriculture and resurrection. The appearance of Venus in its different phases was linked to the optimal times for clearing fields, planting seeds, and harvesting crops. A failure in the maize crop was not just an agricultural disaster, it was a spiritual failure, a sign that the rituals aligned with the celestial cycles had been performed incorrectly or that the gods were displeased. The Mayan calendar, a complex interlocking system of a 260-day sacred round and a 365-day solar year, was essentially a vast mechanism for synchronizing human activity, especially agriculture, with the perceived will of the cosmos. By planting and harvesting according to this celestial schedule, the Maya were participating in a divine order, ensuring the continued cycle of life, death, and rebirth for both their people and their world. This pattern of linking survival to the stars was a global phenomenon. In ancient Greece, the poet Hesiod wrote Works and Days, a practical farmer's almanac in verse form that used the risings and settings of specific constellations to advise on the best times for plowing, sowing, and sailing. The pre-dawn rising of the Pleiades star clusters signaled the start of the harvest season, while their setting in the autumn marked the time to begin plowing. For the ancestors of the Maori in New Zealand, the pre-dawn rising of the star cluster Matariki, which we know as the Pleiades, marked the Maori New Year. Its appearance in the late May or early June sky was a time for remembrance, celebration, and, most importantly, for planning the upcoming planting season. The brightness and clarity of the stars in the cluster were even used to predict the success of the future harvest. This profound integration of myth and survival is the crucial link in understanding why the symbols of the first sky religion proved so resilient. Long after the names of the gods were forgotten and the grand temples fell into ruin, the practical knowledge remained. A farmer might no longer believe that the star Sirius was a goddess named Soptit, but he might still pass down the folk wisdom that a certain star's appearance meant it was time to prepare the fields. The symbol, the star itself, retained its power and meaning because it was associated with a tangible, beneficial outcome. The celestial calendar ensured the community's food supply, and that kind of practical utility is incredibly durable. It becomes embedded in proverbs, in seasonal festivals, and in the very rhythm of community life. The religion could decline because its explanations for why the sky worked were challenged by new ideas, but the observable fact that it worked, that the stars predicted the floods and the seasons, was an undeniable truth that kept the symbols alive in the cultural bloodstream. This deep-seated connection between the heavens and the earth's fertility created a stable foundation for human society, but it was a stability that was terrifyingly vulnerable. When the celestial clockwork was disrupted, when the predictable patterns of the sky failed to deliver their promised bounty on earth, the entire spiritual and social order faced a crisis of faith that would shake civilizations to their core. Yet for all its sophistication, this celestial faith was built upon a foundation of profound predictability. The sun always rose, the seasons always turned, and the stars always returned to their appointed places. This reliable order was the very source of the sky religion's power and comfort. But what happened when that predictability failed, when the heavens remained silent or worse, seemed to turn actively hostile? This is where we encounter one of the most compelling theories for the religion's decline, a series of devastating environmental shifts that shattered humanity's trust in the celestial order. The sky, once a benevolent guide, could become an incomprehensible and terrifying force, and when it did, it triggered a spiritual crisis that forced our ancestors to seek new explanations for a world suddenly plunged into chaos. Consider the Akkadian Empire, history's first true empire, which stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean around 4,300 years ago. Under rulers like Sargon of Akkad, it was a pinnacle of Mesopotamian power and organization, its prosperity built on the Fertile Crescent's agricultural bounty. The Akkadians, like all Mesopotamians, lived by a sky religion. They meticulously observed the heavens, believing the movements of the gods Shamash, Sin, and Ishtar directly influenced their fate. Their priests could predict eclipses and track planetary movements with impressive accuracy, reinforcing their role as essential intermediaries. Then, quite suddenly, the empire collapsed. For centuries, this was a historical mystery. Now, a wealth of scientific evidence points to a catastrophic culprit, a severe multi-centennial megadrought. Ice core samples from glaciers, sediment cores from the Gulf of Oman, and fossilized pollen records all tell the same story, a period of intense aridification that gripped the region around 2200 BC. The life-giving rains failed, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers shrank, crops withered in the fields, and famine ravaged the population. From the perspective of the sky religion, this was an utter cosmological failure. The priests would have performed every ritual, scanned the heavens for every omen, and pleaded with every sky god for deliverance, yet the rains did not return. The predictable covenant between heaven and earth that correct observation and worship would ensure prosperity was broken. The authority of the celestial priesthood, the very core of the ruling structure, would have evaporated along with the soil moisture. As archaeologist Harvey Weiss, a leading proponent of the climate collapse theory for Akkad, argues, this environmental catastrophe led to widespread desertification, agricultural failure, and mass migrations of desperate people, which in turn shattered the political and social order. The empire fragmented into warring city-states fighting over scarce resources. In such a crisis, a religion based on a predictable, orderly sky no longer made sense. The gods had clearly turned their backs, and people were forced to look elsewhere for answers, perhaps to more chthonic, earth-based deities who controlled the underworld waters, or to explanations that placed the blame on human failing rather than celestial indifference. The Akkadian collapse is not an isolated case. A similar pattern seems to have played out with the Maya classic collapse around 900 CE. The Maya were arguably the most advanced astronomers of the ancient Americas, their entire worldview and kingship tied to their ability to predict celestial cycles and thereby ensure the favor of the gods and the success of the maize crop. Paleoclimatologists studying stalagmites in Belizean caves have found clear evidence of repeated intense droughts occurring precisely during the century of the Maya collapse. Again, the celestial order, so meticulously documented in their codices, offered no solution. The rituals performed by the king priests atop their star-aligned pyramids failed to bring rain. This failure likely led to a massive crisis of legitimacy, eroding the people's faith in their divine rulers and the cosmological system that supported them, contributing to the abandonment of the great ceremonial centers. These historical examples reveal a brutal truth. The first sky religion was incredibly powerful in a stable climate, but terribly vulnerable to a changing one. Its entire theology was based on the premise of a knowable, rhythmic cosmos. When nature itself became unpredictable, that premise crumbled. A drought wasn't just a weather event, it was a theological earthquake. It forced a fundamental re-evaluation of humanity's relationship with the divine. If the sky gods could not be relied upon to uphold their end of the bargain, perhaps the problem was not with the rituals, but with the nature of the gods themselves. This environmental pressure cooker may have been the crucial catalyst that spurred humanity toward new religious ideas that were less dependent on the fickle patterns of the weather and the stars, and more focused on moral codes, personal salvation, and gods whose will was expressed through prophecy and scripture rather than planetary movements. This profound crisis of faith, triggered by environmental chaos, created a spiritual vacuum that demanded to be filled. If the vast, impersonal forces of the sky could no longer be trusted to provide order and sustenance, then perhaps the divine was to be found in a more intimate, more human form. This pivotal moment in human consciousness sparked one of the most significant theological shifts in history: the gradual transition from the impersonal, universal sky religion to the rise of personalized, anthropomorphic gods deeply rooted in the earth, in specific peoples, and in the complexities of human society. The boundless sky, home to abstract principles of order, began to give way to the fertile soil, which gave birth to gods who walked, loved, warred, and intervened in human affairs with very human motivations. This was a move from the cosmic to the personal, from the universal to the local, and it fundamentally rewired humanity's relationship with the divine. The new gods that emerged were strikingly different from their celestial predecessors. The sun was no longer just a life-giving disk. It became Apollo, a handsome youth who drove a golden chariot across the sky, who was also the god of music, healing, and prophecy. The thunder was no longer a mysterious atmospheric force. It was the wrath of Zeus, a powerful, bearded king hurling lightning bolts from his mountain throne on Olympus, a god known for his strength, his wisdom, and his notoriously complicated love life. In Norse mythology, the sky itself was personified as Odin, the one-eyed All-Father, a complex figure of wisdom, poetry, and war, who gained his knowledge through personal sacrifice and cunning, not merely by virtue of his cosmic position. These were gods with personalities, families, flaws, and agendas. They could be bargained with, appealed to through prayer and sacrifice, and even tricked. They were relatable in a way that the distant, cyclical movements of the planets could never be. This relatability was the key to their appeal. A farmer facing a local drought could make an offering to Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, hoping to appeal to her maternal nature. A warrior going into battle could pray to Ares or Thor for strength and courage, invoking a divine comrade in arms. This shift offered a sense of localized control and emotional connection that the vast, impersonal sky religion could not. The divine was no longer a distant clockmaker. It was a neighbor, a king, or a parent. This theological evolution was powerfully accelerated by two major social developments: urbanization and empire building. As small, nomadic tribes settled into villages, then towns, and eventually great city-states, their spiritual needs became more complex. A city needed a patron deity, a divine protector and symbol of its unique identity. The goddess Athena wasn't just a wisdom deity, she was the specific patron and namesake of Athens. Her favor was believed to be the source of the city's political and cultural greatness, and her temple, the Parthenon, stood as the ultimate symbol of Athenian civic pride. This created a powerful feedback loop. The city's success proved the power of its patron god, which in turn strengthened the city's identity and the authority of its rulers, who often served as the chief priests. When these city-states began to expand into empires, this concept was exported and adapted. The Roman Empire was a master of this, absorbing the gods of conquered peoples into its own pantheon in a process known as Interpretatio Romana. A local Gallic god of healing might be equated with Apollo, thereby allowing the conquered people to maintain a sense of their religious identity while simultaneously being integrated into the larger Roman religious and political framework. This was a brilliant strategy for imperial control, replacing the universal, borderless sky religion with a managed, hierarchical pantheon that mirrored the structure of the empire itself, with Jupiter Optimus Maximus reigning supreme from the Capitoline Hill, just as the emperor did from Rome. The renowned religious scholar Karen Armstrong provides a crucial framework for understanding this profound transformation. In her seminal work, A History of God, she describes this shift as part of the broader Axial Age, a period between the 8th and 3rd centuries BC when, simultaneously across the globe from Greece to India to China, there was a dramatic move inward in religious thought. Armstrong notes that this was a turn from the external and the visible to the internal and the invisible. The new religious ideas that emerged from Greek philosophy to Buddhism to the Jewish prophets began to focus less on external ritual and cosmic observation and more on the individual's inner world and the ethical rather than the supernatural. The question was no longer, how do we appease the sky god to bring rain, but how do I live a good life, or what is the nature of justice? This internalization made religion portable. Your relationship with a god like Yahweh or your pursuit of Buddhist enlightenment wasn't tied to a specific mountain or star pattern. It could travel with you, a vital asset in an age of increasing migration, trade, and imperial displacement. This new form of faith, focused on moral law and personal piety, inevitably came into conflict with the old sky religion. The Hebrew prophets, for instance, railed relentlessly against the worship of the sun, moon, and host of heaven, which they saw as a backwards distraction from the exclusive covenant with a single, personal God who demanded ethical behavior above all else. The personalization of divinity, while more intimate, also set the stage for a much more exclusive and often intolerant religious landscape, where the old, universal ways of seeing the sacred in the entire cosmos would be increasingly marginalized, suppressed, and ultimately forgotten. This transition from a faith rooted in the observable cosmos to one centered on personal gods was not merely a spiritual evolution, it was a revolution with profound political implications. As human societies grew more complex, organizing into city-states and eventually vast empires, their rulers recognized a tremendous opportunity. The old sky religion, with its decentralized priesthoods and universal symbols, was difficult to control. Its authority was spread among countless local shamans and stargazers who derived their power directly from the heavens, not from a king. For an ambitious monarch seeking to consolidate power, this was a problem. The solution was brilliant and transformative. Co-opt the immense symbolic power of the sky religion and channel it directly through the institution of the state, making the ruler himself the sole, indispensable link between heaven and earth. This was the birth of the divine king, a figure who didn't just rule by divine right, but who was, in the eyes of his subjects, a god incarnate. Nowhere was this political theology more perfectly expressed than in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh was not merely a priest of the sun god Ra, he was the living embodiment of Ra on earth, the son of Ra in his very flesh. This belief was the bedrock of Egyptian civilization for 3,000 years. The pharaoh's role was to maintain the cosmic order of truth, justice, and harmony, which was believed to be constantly under threat from the forces of chaos. His rituals, his victories in battle, and even his good health were not personal matters. They were state functions essential for the continued functioning of the universe. The sun would not rise, the Nile would not flood, and the crops would not grow without the pharaoh performing his divine duties. This ideology brilliantly centralized all religious and political authority into one person, making dissent not just treason, but a sin against the cosmos itself. The entire monumental architecture of Egypt, the pyramids, which were not just tombs but resurrection machines to launch the god-king back to the stars, the temples, which were not just places of worship but economic and administrative centers of the royal cult, all served to reinforce this absolute theocratic power. A similar, though distinct, system emerged in China with the concept of the mandate of heaven. From the Zhou dynasty onward, the emperor was known as the Son of Heaven. He alone was permitted to perform the most important rituals, like the annual ceremony at the Temple of Heaven in Beijing, where he would offer sacrifices and pray for a good harvest on behalf of the entire nation. His authority to rule was granted by heaven itself, but it was conditional. The mandate was not a blank check. It depended on the emperor's virtue and his ability to maintain order and prosperity. If a dynasty was overthrown by rebellion or fell to invasion, it was interpreted as a clear sign that heaven had withdrawn its mandate due to the ruler's incompetence or immorality, and had transferred it to the victorious new leader. This was a powerful tool for legitimizing new regimes while simultaneously creating a system of celestial accountability that justified the removal of unjust rulers. The sky was no longer a direct object of worship for the masses. It was a political barometer, its favor measured through the success of the state and its emperor. The most dramatic and revealing example of this political struggle over celestial symbolism is the story of the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten. Around 1350 BC, Akhenaten attempted the most radical religious revolution in history. He rejected the entire pantheon of Egyptian gods with their animal heads and complex myths, and declared that there was only one true deity, the Aten, the life-giving disk of the sun itself. This was not a return to the impersonal sky religion of old, however. Akhenaten made himself the Aten's sole prophet and intermediary. Only he and his queen, Nefertiti, could truly understand and communicate with the god. He built an entirely new capital city, Akhenaten, and ordered the names and images of the old gods like Ammon to be chiseled off temples across Egypt. In art, the Aten was depicted not as a god in human or animal form, but as a sun disk whose rays ended in hands that held the Ankh, the symbol of life, exclusively to the royal family. This was the ultimate consolidation of religious power, by stripping away the entire priestly class of the old gods and making the state religion a direct transaction between the sun and the royal household. Akhenaten sought to make all spiritual authority flow through him alone. His revolution, however, was a spectacular failure. The powerful priesthood of Ammon, whose wealth and influence had been built over centuries, fiercely resisted. The common people, cut off from their beloved gods and the familiar rituals that gave meaning to their lives and their afterlife, were likely bewildered and resentful. Akhenaten's focus on his new theology came at the expense of foreign policy and domestic stability. Shortly after his death, his young successor, Tutankhamun, famously restored the old gods. The city of Akhenaten was abandoned, and Akhenaten's name was erased from the official king lists, condemned as a heretic. His experiment demonstrates both the immense appeal of monopolizing religious power for the state and the tremendous risks of moving too fast against deeply ingrained beliefs. It showed that while the symbols of the sky religion were powerful tools for control, they could not be entirely divorced from their cultural context without triggering a violent backlash. This pattern of political centralization inevitably led to the suppression of the old, decentralized forms of sky worship. The independent shaman who read the stars for a village, the local seer who interpreted an eclipse, the family that made offerings to the morning star. All these practices represented a challenge to the state's monopoly on divine communication. They were sources of alternative authority that could not be tolerated. Across the ancient world, we see evidence of state-sanctioned cults rising to prominence while older, more personal celestial practices were marginalized or outlawed. In Babylon, the elaborate astrological omen series were compiled and controlled by court scholars who advised the king. Celestial divination became a matter of state security, not personal curiosity. In Rome, the Emperor Augustus actively promoted the cult of his divine adoptive father, Julius Caesar, who had been declared a god and associated with a comet scene after his death. This new, state-managed, celestial event was used to legitimize the Julio-Claudian line in a way that the traditional worship of Sol or Luna never could. The sky was being systematically remade into a propaganda tool. its ancient, universal symbols carefully harvested and repurposed to serve the needs of the new political order, setting the stage for the next phase of their journey into the modern world. This process of political co-opting set the stage for one of the most fascinating mechanisms in religious history: the absorption and transformation of ancient symbols by new cultures and faiths. When a conquering power or a rising religion encounters a deeply entrenched belief system, it often faces a choice: eradicate it entirely or find a way to harness its power. More often than not, the smarter strategy has been assimilation, a process scholars call syncretism. This is the blending of different beliefs and practices, where old gods are given new names and ancient symbols are infused with fresh meanings. It's not a matter of simply replacing one thing with another. It's a complex alchemy where the old is preserved within the new, ensuring the survival of powerful imagery by giving it a new home and a new story. The symbols of the first sky religion, already repurposed by kings, were now perfectly positioned for this next great transformation, allowing them to journey seamlessly into the heart of New World religions and empires. The Roman Empire provides a masterclass in this strategy of religious assimilation. As Rome expanded, its legions and administrators encountered a bewildering array of local gods and cults across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Rather than imposing their own pantheon by force and risk inciting rebellion, the Romans practiced a brilliant form of theological diplomacy known as interpretatio Romana, the Roman interpretation. They would identify a local deity worshipped by a conquered people and equate it with the most similar Roman god. A Celtic sky god like Tyrannes, associated with the wheel and the thunder, was seamlessly recast as a regional version of Jupiter, the king of the Roman gods. A Gallic healing spring goddess might become identified with Minerva. This wasn't a cynical erasure. It was a genuine attempt to understand foreign gods through a Roman lens. By doing this, Rome allowed conquered peoples to maintain a sense of their cultural and religious identity while simultaneously integrating them into the broader imperial framework. The local god was not destroyed. It was given a Roman passport, and in the process, the symbols of that god, the solar wheel, the lightning bolt, the sacred tree, were adopted into the vast visual library of the empire, ensuring their continued relevance and visibility across the known world. This syncretic process reached its most profound and lasting expression with the rise of Christianity. Early Christians faced an immense challenge: how to spread their new, monotheistic faith in a world utterly saturated with the imagery and festivals of paganism, much of it derived from the old sky religion. The solution was not to reject this symbolic world outright, but to deliberately reinterpret it, to baptize it, filling familiar forms with new Christian meaning. Take the celebration of Christmas. For centuries, the Roman Empire had celebrated the festival of Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of the unconquered sun, on December 25th. This was a major public holiday marking the winter solstice, the point after which the days finally begin to lengthen and the sun's power returns. It was a time of feasting, gift-giving, and light. When the Church sought to establish a date for celebrating the birth of Jesus, the choice of December 25th was a strategic masterpiece. It allowed new converts to continue their beloved midwinter traditions, but now the unconquered sun, whose birth they celebrated, was Christ, the light of the world. The outward form of the festival, the lights, the greenery, the spirit of hope in the darkest time of year, remained comfortingly the same, but its inner meaning was completely transformed. The same pattern occurred with Easter, which closely aligns with the spring equinox and incorporates symbols of fertility and rebirth like eggs and rabbits that have deep, pre-Christian roots, celebrating the return of life after winter. Perhaps the most visually powerful example of this symbolic transformation is the Christian halo. In ancient art, radiating light had long been the exclusive attribute of solar deities. The Egyptian sun god Ra was depicted with a sun disk on his head. The Greek god Apollo was shown with rays of light emanating from his brow. Roman emperors, following the example of Alexander the Great, were often portrayed with a corona radiata, a radiate crown, to signify their own solar divinity and deified status. Early Christian artists faced a dilemma: how to visually represent the holiness of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the saints in a way that would be immediately understandable to a population steeped in this artistic tradition. Their solution was to adapt the solar disk into the halo, a circle of golden light behind the head of a sacred figure. The symbol was instantly recognizable as denoting divinity, power, and sanctity, but its meaning was now completely redefined. It no longer represented the physical sun, but the light of divine grace, an internal spiritual radiance shining forth from a saintly soul. This was syncretism at its most elegant. An ancient symbol of the sky religion was stripped of its pagan context and became one of the most ubiquitous and enduring symbols in all of Christian art. The sun disk did not disappear, it was sanctified. This pattern of adaptive reuse is a global phenomenon, not confined to the Mediterranean world. When Spanish conquistadors and missionaries arrived in the Americas, they were confronted with the deeply rooted sky religion of the Aztecs, which included powerful solar symbolism and a pantheon of celestial deities. Rather than simply destroying every temple and forbidding every practice, a task that would have been impossible, they often built their Christian churches directly on top of the foundations of the old Aztec temples, literally using the sacred stones of the past to construct the new faith. They associated the Virgin Mary with the Aztec mother goddess Tonantzin, leading to the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe, whose appearance on the hill of Tepeyac, a site already sacred to Tonantzin, became a cornerstone of Mexican Catholicism. The native people could venerate the Virgin in a place that already felt holy to them, and her imagery, interestingly, was described as appearing on tilma cloth surrounded by rays of sunlight, again echoing that ancient solar symbolism. This incredible longevity of celestial symbols through syncretism reveals something crucial about the human mind. These images, the sun, the radiant light, the world tree, are not arbitrary. They seem to carry a primal power and recognition that transcends any specific religious doctrine. A conquering general or a missionary might be able to change the name of a god, but it is far more difficult to erase the deep, emotional resonance of a symbol that has been woven into a culture's calendar, its art, and its very language for thousands of years. Syncretism, therefore, is more than just a political or evangelistic strategy. It is an unconscious acknowledgement of the power of these ancient forms. It is an admission that the old ways of seeing the world, the old patterns of the first sky religion, contained a truth so fundamental that the new faith could not simply discard it, but had to find a way to make it its own. This adaptive reuse ensured that the symbols would survive not as dusty relics, but as living, evolving parts of human culture, their original celestial meanings hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be rediscovered. This shift in spiritual authority from the sky to the state was monumental, but it was arguably surpassed by an even more profound revolution, one that transferred the very source of divine truth from the vast, observable heavens onto the portable, tangible pages of a book. The advent of written scriptures, from the Vedas in India to the Hebrew Bible in the Levant, fundamentally rewired humanity's relationship with the divine. For millennia, the sky itself had been the primary text, a living scripture written in the movements of the sun, the phases of the moon, and the slow dance of the constellations. Revelation was a public, observable event. Anyone could look up and see the same celestial drama unfold. But with the rise of sacred texts, revelation became fixed, codified, and ultimately controlled. The Word of God was no longer something to be witnessed in the sunrise. It was something to be read, interpreted, and decreed by a new class of literate experts. This was a move from a participatory, experience-based religion to a more dogmatic, belief-based one, and it dramatically diminished the sky's role as the most direct and universal medium of the divine. Consider the ancient Indian Vedic tradition. Its earliest hymns, composed over 3,000 years ago, are filled with awe for the celestial deities. The sun god Surya, the moon god Chandra, and the dawn goddess Ushas are all celebrated in vibrant detail. The entire Vedic ritual calendar was meticulously aligned with astronomical events. Yet, as this vast oral tradition began to be written down and systematized into the texts we know as the Vedas, a subtle shift occurred. The focus began to move inward, from the external performance of sky-aligned sacrifices to the internal, philosophical speculations of the Upanishads, the later Vedic texts. The ultimate reality, Brahman, was increasingly described as formless and transcendent, beyond the physical cosmos. The heavenly bodies, once mighty gods in their own right, were gradually demoted to being merely manifestations or instruments of this higher, abstract principle. The path to liberation was no longer through correctly observing and appeasing the sky gods, but through studying the sacred texts, understanding their hidden meanings, and following the guidance of the Brahmin priests who were their exclusive guardians. The sky was still respected, but its status had been reduced from the main event to a supporting illustration of truths more perfectly contained in written scripture. This pattern is even more starkly illustrated in the development of the Hebrew Bible. The ancient Israelites were surrounded by cultures Canaanite, Babylonian, Egyptian, for whom astral worship was absolutely central. There is strong archaeological and textual evidence that early Israelite religion itself included elements of this, with practices like worshipping the host of heaven. But the biblical prophets and Deuteronomistic reformers waged a relentless, centuries-long campaign against it. They portrayed the sun, moon, and stars not as deities, but as mere creations of a single, transcendent God, Yahweh, who could not be represented by any physical image, especially not celestial bodies. The book of Deuteronomy contains explicit and fierce condemnations, and when you look up to the sky and see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the heavenly array, do not be enticed into bowing down to them or worshipping things the Lord your God has apportioned to all the nations under heaven. The prophets Jeremiah and Zephaniah railed against those who burned incense to the sun or worshipped the stars on their rooftops. This was a deliberate theological strategy to separate the divine utterly from the natural world, making God completely other. His will was not to be discerned by looking at the stars, but by listening to his prophets and obeying the laws set down in the sacred text. The ultimate source of truth shifted from the observatory to the scroll. This revolution created a new center of gravity for religious life and a new locus of power. Authority drained away from the sky watchers, the astrologers and priests who read the heavens, and flowed toward the scribes, the scholars, and the priests who could read and interpret the written word. Literacy, once a rare skill primarily used for administrative record-keeping, became a sacred tool. The power to determine orthodoxy, to explain the divine will, and to control access to salvation now belonged to those who possessed the texts and the education to understand them. This created a hierarchical, text-based religious culture that could be more easily centralized and controlled by religious institutions. The divine was no longer immediately accessible to any shepherd who looked up at the night sky. It was mediated through the complex layers of textual interpretation provided by a priestly class. This also made faith more portable and resilient. A religion based on a sacred book could survive exile, diaspora, and the destruction of its temples. The Jewish people, after the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem and their exile to Babylon, could no longer perform the temple rituals that were central to their faith. In this crisis, the study of the Torah, the written law, became the new center of Jewish life, ensuring their spiritual and cultural survival far from their homeland. The sky over Babylon was foreign, but the words of their scripture were a portable homeland they could carry with them anywhere. This literary revolution paved the way for the world's great religions of the book, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which are fundamentally rooted in the belief that God's ultimate revelation is a historical event communicated through prophets and recorded in sacred text. While the beauty of creation, including the heavens, might be praised as a testament to God's glory, it is always secondary to the primacy of the written word. The cosmos becomes a supporting actor in a drama whose script is already written. This led to a more dogmatic and less empirically observable form of faith. A dispute in a sky religion could be settled by waiting for a celestial event. A dispute in a text-based religion had to be settled by debating the interpretation of a verse, a process that often led to schisms, heresies, and inquisitions. The sky offered a universal, democratic revelation, the same for everyone regardless of language or status. The written word, by its very nature, created a division between the literate elite who could access its full meaning and the illiterate masses who had to rely on their teachings, a division that would shape religious authority for centuries to come. The stars had been silenced, their ancient voice overshadowed by the authority of the page. Yet for all the power of sacred texts, a new and even more profound challenge to the celestial divine was brewing, not in the temples or the synagogues, but in the observatories and the studies of natural philosophers. The rise of written scripture had relocated divine authority from the sky to the page, but the scientific revolution would perform a far more radical operation. It would dissect the heavens themselves, not to find God, but to uncover the cold, mechanical laws of physics. This was the final, decisive blow to the first sky religion's worldview, a process that transformed the sky from a living, breathing embodiment of the divine into a vast, predictable, and ultimately impersonal machine. The cosmos was disenchanted, its mystery systematically unraveled by mathematics and reason, leaving its symbols spiritually orphaned yet culturally resilient. The revolution began not with a bang, but with a quiet, mathematical hypothesis that would shatter humanity's place in the universe. In 1543, the Polish astronomer Nicolaus Copernicus published On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres, a book that dared to propose a heretical idea. The Earth was not the immovable center of God's creation. Instead, it was merely one of several planets orbiting the Sun. This was more than a scientific correction. It was a theological earthquake. For over a millennium, the Ptolemaic model, with the Earth at the center and the celestial spheres rotating around it in perfect, divine order, had been the bedrock of Christian cosmology. It placed humanity at the physical center of God's attention. Copernicus, a devout man who saw his system as more elegantly reflecting God's design, inadvertently kicked off a process that would ultimately push God to the periphery. His model was a crucial first step in what the German sociologist Max Weber would later famously call the disenchantment of the world, the process by which the world is increasingly understood through calculation and scientific reason rather than through mystery, magic, and religious meaning. The disenchantment accelerated dramatically with the work of Johannes Kepler and Galileo Galilei. Kepler, a man who sought God in geometry, discovered that the planets moved not in perfect circles, but in ellipses, and that their speeds could be described with precise mathematical laws. The music of the spheres was not a metaphor, it was a set of equations. Then Galileo turned his telescope to the heavens and saw something that horrified the church authorities. The moon was not a perfect, smooth celestial body, but a rocky, cratered world like the Earth. Jupiter had its own moons, a solar system in miniature that did not revolve around Earth. The heavens were not perfect and unchanging, they were material and flawed, just like our own world. Galileo's trial and forced recantation by the Inquisition in 1633 was not just a conflict between science and religion, but a last, desperate stand for an enchanted cosmos where the sky was a divine realm fundamentally different from the fallen Earth below. Science had begun to peel back the curtain, revealing the celestial machinery behind the sacred show. The final act of this cosmological revolution came from Isaac Newton. In his monumental Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, published in 1687, Newton presented a universe governed by universal gravitation, a single mathematical force that explained everything from the fall of an apple to the orbit of the moon. The same law operated in the heavens and on Earth, binding the cosmos into one great, predictable mechanism. God, in Newton's view, was the divine clockmaker who had built this perfect machine and set it in motion, but the machine itself ran on its own, according to immutable laws that did not require his constant intervention. For the average person, this was the ultimate disenchantment. The thunder was no longer the wrath of Thor or the voice of Yahweh. It was the sound of atmospheric pressure. A comet was no longer a terrifying omen from the gods. It was a predictable ball of ice and rock following an elliptical path. The sky had been demystified. Its phenomena were no longer messages to be interpreted by priests, but problems to be solved by physicists. This rationalization had a paradoxical effect on the symbols of the old sky religion. Stripped of their divine context, they lost their numinous power, their ability to evoke a sense of the sacred. The sun disk was no longer the chariot of a god. It was a gravitational engine fusing hydrogen into helium. The axis mundi was no longer a ladder to heaven. It was a mythological concept, yet these symbols did not vanish. Instead, they underwent a kind of cultural migration, finding new life in the realms of aesthetics, politics, and national identity. Their religious meaning faded, but their symbolic power, their deep-rooted resonance in the human psyche, remained. They became decorative, metaphorical, or nostalgic, valued for their beauty and historical association rather than their theological truth. The halo in Renaissance art, though still used, was often depicted more as a stylistic convention than a literal emanation of divine light. The sun on a national flag could represent enlightenment and progress, ideas born from the scientific revolution itself, rather than a deity to be worshipped. The process of disenchantment, as Weber argued, did not destroy our need for meaning, but it did force that meaning to find new, often secular, containers. The symbols of the sky persisted, but now they spoke the language of art, power, and culture, their ancient divine whisper reduced to a faint, almost inaudible echo beneath their new, polished surfaces. Even as the scientific revolution was systematically disenchanting the cosmos, reducing the heavens to a clockwork of physical laws, humanity never lost its deeply ingrained desire to reach for the sky. That ancient, primal impulse to connect the earthly with the celestial did not vanish. It simply found a new medium of expression. It migrated from the realm of religion and ritual into the very stones and steel of our cities, becoming permanently etched into our architectural landscape. The symbols of the first sky religion, stripped of their original theological context, were subliminally repurposed, ensuring that even in our most secular spaces, we are still unconsciously building monuments to a forgotten sky. Our city skylines, dominated by spires, towers, and domes, are in many ways the last great cathedrals of the celestial faith, silent testimonies to an enduring human yearning for ascent and order. The most direct architectural echo of the ancient Axis Mundi is without a doubt the spire of the Gothic cathedral. These breathtaking stone structures, reaching hundreds of feet into the air, are far more than just impressive feats of medieval engineering. They are physical prayers, deliberate attempts to pierce the barrier between heaven and earth. When you stand at the base of the spire of Chartres Cathedral or Cologne Cathedral, your eye is compelled to travel upward, following the intricate stonework as it seems to dissolve into the sky. This vertical pull is a deliberate architectural metaphor for the soul's journey toward God, a direct descendant of the shaman's ascent along the world tree. The entire layout of a traditional Christian church reinforces this. The long nave represents the earthly world of the congregation, while the altar at the east end, often under a magnificent dome, represents the heavenly Jerusalem. The faithful literally move from the profane world at the entrance toward the sacred space at the altar, reenacting a symbolic journey along the cosmic axis. The stained glass rose windows that adorn these cathedrals are another powerful holdover. Their intricate, radiating patterns of jewel-toned glass are not just beautiful decorations, they are stylized sun discs. When the sun shines through them, flooding the dark interior with a kaleidoscope of divine, colored light, they transform the church into a microcosm of the cosmos with the sun, or the sun, at its center, illuminating the darkness of the world. This celestial symbolism is a global architectural language not confined to Europe. The Buddhist stupa, one of the oldest and most enduring forms of sacred architecture, is a perfect representation of the Axis Mundi and the cosmic mountain. Take the Great Stupa at Sanchai in India. Its design is profoundly symbolic. The hemispherical dome represents the dome of the heavens, or the world egg. At its center, a vertical pole, or yasti, rises, symbolizing the cosmic axis that connects the earthly realm to the higher planes of existence. This pole is topped by a series of harmicas, or square railings, representing the higher celestial realms, and is often crowned by a series of umbrellas, signifying spiritual sovereignty and ascent. The entire structure is an elaborate three-dimensional mandala, a map of the universe designed to guide the devotee's meditation upward from the mundane world toward enlightenment. The faithful don't enter the stupa, they circumambulate it, walking a ritual path that mirrors the orderly rotation of the planets and stars around the universal axis. It is a machine for transcendence built entirely of brick and stone. In the modern, secular world, this longing for a celestial connection did not disappear. It was transferred to the realm of civic and national identity. The Washington Monument in the heart of the American capital is a quintessential example. This towering white obelisk, the tallest stone structure in the world when completed, owes its form to ancient Egypt, a civilization that understood the power of the Axis Mundi better than most. The Egyptian obelisk was a petrified ray of the sun god Ra, a solid beam of sunlight connecting the earth to the heavens, while the Washington Monument obviously does not carry that specific religious meaning. Its symbolic function is strikingly similar. It is a secular Axis Mundi, an architectural declaration of national aspiration and order. It anchors the entire design of the National Mall, creating a strong, vertical counterpoint to the horizontal lines of the Capitol and the Lincoln Memorial. It represents the lofty ideals of the nation reaching toward the heavens, a symbol of unity and aspiration that transcends any one individual. Similarly, The domes of the United States Capitol and countless state capitol buildings are direct descendants of the domes of the Roman Pantheon and St. Peter's Basilica, originally symbolizing the vault of heaven. These domes were repurposed to represent the encompassing authority and lofty goals of the democratic state, creating a sense of awe and order for citizens walking beneath them. This subliminal evocation of celestial ascent and order is perhaps most powerfully felt in the modern skyscraper. The relentless vertical competition of city skylines from New York to Dubai is driven by economics and ego, but its psychological appeal taps into something much older. The very term skyscraper betrays its celestial ambition. These glass and steel mountains are our modern ziggurats, artificial peaks that allow us to literally rise above the chaos of the street and gain a God's eye view of the world below. The shimmering glass facades reflect the ever-changing sky, constantly reminding those inside and outside of their connection to the heavens above. The sleek, clean lines and repetitive patterns of these towers create a powerful sense of mathematical order and predictability, a modern echo of the cosmic harmony the ancients saw in the movements of the stars. We may work in these buildings as accountants, lawyers, or tech executives, but the architecture itself subconsciously satisfies that ancient need to orient ourselves within a larger, ordered cosmos, to feel that we are part of a system that, despite the chaos of daily life, ultimately makes sense. Our urban landscapes are, therefore, vast, open-air museums of the human spirit, filled with structures that continue to whisper the old stories of the sky, stories we are still compelled to tell, even if we have forgotten the original words. This seamless migration of celestial symbols from sacred temples to the seats of secular power finds its most public and potent expression in the vibrant tapestry of national flags. When a new nation is born or an old one seeks to redefine itself, it reaches for symbols that carry deep, almost primal resonance. Time and again, across continents and cultures, the chosen emblems are those drawn from the ancient lexicon of the sky, the sun, the moon, and the stars. These icons are pressed into a new service, no longer representing gods to be worshipped, but ideals to be aspired to: liberty, unity, progress, and national destiny. A flag is more than a piece of cloth. It is a nation's story condensed into a single, powerful image, and the most enduring chapters of that story were written long ago in the stars. Consider the profound simplicity of Japan's national flag, known as the Nisshoki or the Hinamaru. Against a pure white field representing honesty and purity sits a bold red circle perfectly centered. This is not merely a geometric design. It is a direct and powerful invocation of the sun itself. The symbolism is deeply rooted in Japanese mythology, where the sun goddess Amaterasu is considered the divine ancestor of the imperial line. Yet, for the modern Japanese state, the flag's meaning has been consciously secularized. The red sun no longer signifies a specific deity, but evokes broader, more universal concepts: the dawning of a new era, the promise of a bright future, and the unique identity of a nation known as the Land of the Rising Sun. It is a masterclass in symbolic efficiency, using an ancient celestial form to convey a modern national spirit without explicit religious dogma. On the other side of the world, the flag of Argentina tells a similar story with a different celestial cast. Its horizontal bands of light blue and white are said to represent the sky and clouds, immediately establishing a celestial backdrop. But the centerpiece is the golden sun of May, its face peering out from the white band with a serene yet determined expression. This sun has a very specific historical origin. It is the Sol de Mayo, a symbol of the May Revolution of 1810 that began Argentina's struggle for independence from Spain. The sun's humanized face is a direct reference to the Inca sun god Inti, a conscious nod to the pre-colonial heritage of the Americas, and a declaration of a new, independent destiny breaking free from the old world. Here, the sun is not a passive symbol of nature, but an active emblem of liberty and revolutionary enlightenment, its rays bursting forth like a national awakening. The European Union offers a fascinating example of celestial symbolism designed for a supranational identity. Its flag features a circle of 12 five-pointed gold stars on a deep blue field. The number 12 was deliberately chosen not to represent member states, as the Union has grown far beyond that number, but for its powerful, timeless symbolism. In various cultural traditions, 12 is a number of perfection and completeness, the 12 months of the year, the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 labors of Hercules, the 12 apostles. The circle itself is an ancient symbol of unity, wholeness, and cycles. Together, the design evokes the idea of unity among the peoples of Europe, perfection, and a shared destiny under a common sky. It is a thoroughly modern symbol, yet it draws its strength from the same well of celestial imagery that inspired the first sky watchers. The field of vexillology, the study of flags, provides critical insight into why these particular symbols are so effective. Vexillologists emphasize principles of good flag design, simplicity, meaningful symbolism, and limited use of colors. Celestial bodies excel on all these counts. A star or a sun is a simple, bold, and instantly recognizable shape that remains clear even when fluttering in the wind or seen from a distance. Their meanings are layered and powerful. Stars, for instance, can represent hope, divinity, guidance, or the states of a federation, as seen on the flag of the United States or Australia. The eagle, a creature that soars higher than any other, has long been a solar symbol across cultures, from the eagle of Zeus carrying his thunderbolts to the sacred eagle of Native American tribes. It appears on the coats of arms and flags of numerous nations, from Germany to Mexico to Egypt, universally symbolizing power, sovereignty, and a perspective that rises above the mundane to survey the entire domain. This political repurposing demonstrates the incredible flexibility and enduring power of these ancient motifs. A symbol that once demanded animal sacrifice or complex rituals to ensure the sun's daily return is now stitched onto a backpack or waved at a sporting event to express patriotic pride. The divine blessing has been translated into nationalistic fervor. The cosmic order has become civic order. This is not a dilution of the symbol's power, but rather a testament to its profound adaptability. These forms are so deeply embedded in the human psyche that they can be stripped of their original theological context and still communicate a sense of awe, belonging, and transcendent purpose. They allow a modern, pluralistic society to tap into that ancient sense of wonder and unity without requiring a shared religious belief, instead forging a new secular covenant under the same old, watchful sky. Our flags are, in a very real sense, the last universal prayer of the state, a silent invocation of celestial power for earthly governance. Yet for all our scientific enlightenment, one of the most direct and unbroken threads back to the first sky religion still weaves through our daily lives, not in our monuments, but in our newspapers, our smartphones, and our most personal conversations. Astrology, the belief that the positions and movements of celestial bodies influence human affairs and terrestrial events, is the most vibrant and contentious living descendant of that ancient cosmic faith. It represents a fascinating paradox, a system of thought thoroughly discredited by the very science that grew from observing the same heavens, yet one that persists with remarkable resilience, adapting to every new technology and cultural shift. This isn't a mere historical relic, It's a multi-billion-dollar global industry that shapes relationships, wellness routines, and even business decisions, proving that the human desire to find personal meaning in the impersonal cosmos is as powerful today as it was millennia ago. The mechanics of modern astrology are a direct inheritance from the sky religion's priestly class. The zodiac itself, that belt of constellations through which the sun, moon, and planets appear to travel, is a Babylonian invention dating back over 2,500 years. The idea that the precise arrangement of these bodies at the moment of a person's birth could map their personality and destiny is a direct outgrowth of the belief that the sky is a divine script, if only we know how to read it. What was once the specialized knowledge of court astrologers advising emperors is now democratized and available to anyone with an internet connection. We've traded clay tablets for apps, but the fundamental premise remains unchanged. The cosmos is not random, and our lives are intimately entwined with its rhythms. The daily horoscope in a newspaper condenses this ancient, complex practice into a bite-sized piece of guidance, a modern-day omen for the masses, offering a sense of order and foresight in the chaos of daily life. This celestial guidance has found a particularly fertile ground in the digital age, seamlessly integrating into the very platforms that define modern social interaction. Dating apps like Co-Star and The Pattern have exploded in popularity, offering not just potential matches, but astrological compatibility reports. Users can scrutinize the synastry, the astrological interplay between two charts, before even going on a first date, using the positions of Venus and Mars as a preemptive filter for romantic potential. In the wellness sphere, astrology provides a framework for self-care that feels both personalized and connected to something larger. Mercury retrograde has entered the common lexicon as an explanation for technological glitches and communication breakdowns, prompting millions to back up their hard drives and double-check emails, much as an ancient Babylonian might have postponed a journey under an inauspicious omen. Moon rituals, where individuals set intentions at the new moon and release negativity at the full moon, have become a popular practice, directly echoing the ancient understanding of lunar cycles as times of potent energy and transformation. This isn't seen as mere superstition by its practitioners. It's a holistic language for understanding the self in relation to the universe, a way of creating narrative and ritual in an increasingly secular and disconnected world. Psychologists point to deep-seated cognitive biases to explain this enduring appeal, regardless of its scientific validity. One of the most relevant is the Barnum effect, named after the showman P. T. Barnum, who famously said, "We have something for everyone." This is the tendency for people to accept vague, general personality descriptions as uniquely accurate for themselves. A horoscope that says, "You sometimes doubt your decisions but have a great capacity for kindness," feels personally resonant to a vast number of people because it describes nearly universal human experiences. Astrology provides a powerful narrative framework. Dr. Brian R. Little, a renowned psychologist and personality expert, suggests that human beings are storytelling organisms, and we have a profound need to narrativize our lives. Astrology offers a pre-written cosmic story into which we can insert ourselves, providing a sense of meaning, pattern, and even comfort during difficult times by framing challenges as planetary transits that will eventually pass. It reduces the terrifying randomness of existence by suggesting that even our struggles are part of a larger celestial plan, a modern-day theodicy that makes suffering feel purposeful. This creates a fascinating point of tension and overlap between the worldviews of science and spirituality. A physicist can explain the gravitational influence of the moon on Earth's tides with perfect accuracy, while simultaneously dismissing the idea of the moon influencing human emotion as absurd. Yet the cultural and psychological pull of the latter remains undeniable. This isn't necessarily a conflict between right and wrong, but often a difference in the types of truth being sought. Science seeks objective, empirical truth about external mechanisms. Astrology, for its modern adherents, often provides a subjective, narrative truth about internal experience, a language for articulating intuition, emotion, and personal growth. For many, these two realms coexist peacefully. One can fully accept the science of astronomy while also enjoying astrology as a tool for introspection, much like engaging with a compelling myth or novel. The human brain is a pattern recognition machine honed by evolution to find cause and effect. Astrology is, in a sense, that primal instinct applied to the grandest canvas imaginable, the starry sky itself, suggesting that our deepest need is not just to explain the universe, but to feel that it explains us in return. Long after the last temple to a sun god fell into ruin and the role of the celestial priest faded into history, the symbols of the first sky religion found a powerful and enduring sanctuary in the human imagination, expressed through art and literature. This is where the cosmic and the personal collide most beautifully, where the vast, impersonal heavens are filtered through the individual soul of the artist to create works that resonate across centuries. When a painter applies cobalt blue to a canvas or a poet searches for a metaphor for the infinite, they instinctively return to the same celestial well that quenched the spiritual thirst of our earliest ancestors. These motifs, the starry night, the radiant sun, the luminous moon, become a universal language, a set of deep archetypal tools used to express the inexpressible, our longing for transcendence, our hunger for hope, and our confrontation with the sublime mystery of existence. Consider the swirling, turbulent heavens of Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night. Painted from the window of his asylum room in Saint-Rémy de Provence, this is not a literal, astronomical depiction of the night sky. It is a psychological and spiritual portrait. The stars are not merely points of light, they are great, pulsating orbs of energy, each one a miniature galaxy of swirling brilliance. The crescent moon burns with the intensity of a miniature sun. The cypress tree in the foreground, often interpreted as a symbol of death and eternity, reaches upward like a dark flame, a silent, earthbound counterpart to the celestial firestorm above. The entire village below sleeps peacefully, unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding over their roofs. Van Gogh's sky is alive, conscious, and emotionally charged. It is a vision of the universe as a place of immense dynamic energy, a far cry from the cold, mechanical void described by the science of his day. He uses the celestial motif not to depict what his eyes see, but what his soul feels, a profound, aching connection to a universe that is both terrifyingly powerful and breathtakingly beautiful. The painting is a perfect example of how a modern artist, working from a place of deep personal turmoil, could tap into the ancient power of the starry sky to communicate a state of mind that words failed to capture. Centuries earlier, the Italian poet Dante Alighieri constructed perhaps the most elaborate literary cathedral ever built to the celestial ideal. His Divine Comedy is a grand journey from the depths of hell to the pinnacle of paradise, and its entire structure is a poetic axis mundi. The final volume, Paradiso, is a staggering work of celestial literature. As Dante ascends through the spheres of the moon, Mercury, Venus, and beyond, each heavenly body is not a physical destination but a state of being, a level of spiritual enlightenment and proximity to the divine. The deeper he travels into the cosmos, the more the physical universe gives way to pure light, music, and love. Dante's ultimate vision of God is not of an old man on a throne, but of three concentric circles of light, a divine trinity that is the source of all creation. He uses the structure of the medieval Ptolemaic universe with its concentric crystalline spheres as a metaphorical ladder to describe a spiritual ascent. The planets and stars are the rungs on this ladder, each one a stepping stone to a higher understanding. Dante's cosmos is the antithesis of disenchantment. It is a universe utterly saturated with meaning, purpose, and divine love, where every celestial body is an angelic choir and every star is a thought in the mind of God. He masterfully uses the celestial motif to map the interior journey of the soul, proving that the sky's primary function has always been to help us understand our own place in the grand scheme of things. This artistic invocation of the cosmos is not confined to the Western canon. In traditional Chinese landscape painting, particularly from the Song dynasty, the relationship between the human and the celestial is expressed with serene majesty. These vast, misty scrolls depict towering mountains that seem to pierce the heavens, their peaks often obscured by clouds. Tiny human figures might be seen traversing a path beside a stream, utterly dwarfed by the grandeur of nature. The composition is never just a pretty scene, it is a philosophical statement. The mountain is a direct representation of the cosmic axis, the conduit between the earthly and the heavenly realms. The mist that shrouds the summit represents the ineffable, the mysterious Tao that cannot be named or directly seen, only felt. The smallness of the human figures is not meant to diminish humanity, but to place it in its proper context as a small but integral part of a vast, harmonious, and sacred cosmic order. The artist uses the landscape itself as a celestial motif to express a world view where humanity does not dominate nature, but seeks to live in respectful alignment with its eternal principles. In more recent times, poets have continued to mine the sky for its metaphorical richness. Emily Dickinson, in her characteristically sparse and powerful style, often used celestial imagery to explore themes of death, eternity, and the limits of perception. In one poem, she describes the morning after a death, writing, "The sun kept stooping low / the hills to meet him rose." Here, the sun's setting and rising is not a scientific fact but a personified participant in a drama of grief and renewal. The celestial bodies become actors on a stage, their movements reflecting the emotional state of the world. For Dickinson, the night sky, with its dizzying array of stars, was both a comfort and a terrifying abyss, a reminder of both the promise of immortality and the frightening scale of a universe that might be indifferent to human affairs. Her work shows how the same celestial symbols can hold contradictory meanings, containing both hope and despair, intimacy and immensity, all within the same set of stars. This enduring artistic impulse confirms that the symbols of the first sky religion are far more than historical curiosities. They are fundamental components of our symbolic vocabulary. They persist because they tap into what the psychoanalyst Carl Jung would call archetypes of the collective unconscious universal, primordial patterns of thought and experience that are shared across humanity. The sun is not just a star, it is an archetype of the conscious self, of vitality, and of the father principle. The moon is an archetype of the unconscious, of rhythm, and of the mother principle. The starry night is an archetype of the infinite, the mysterious, and the world of dreams. When an artist employs these symbols, they are not being unoriginal. They are plugging into a deep, shared source of human meaning that transcends culture and epoch. They are speaking a language that, on some level, every human understands. This is why a painting of a starry night can move someone who knows nothing of Van Gogh's biography, and why a 700-year-old poem about climbing through the spheres can still feel relevant. The artistic continuity we see from the cave paintings of Lascaux to the digital art of today is a testament to a universal and unchanging human longing to feel connected to something larger than ourselves, to find a pattern in the chaos, and to believe that our individual stories are somehow written in the light of the eternal stars. But why do these symbols hold such an unshakable power over us, echoing across millennia and cultures with such consistency? If we've scientifically disenchanted the heavens and politically repurposed their icons, why do the sun, moon, and stars still feel so deeply significant on a personal level? The answer may lie not in the sky above, but in the mind within. To understand this, we turn to the groundbreaking work of the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung, who proposed that the human psyche itself is wired for these celestial forms. Jung introduced the revolutionary concept of the collective unconscious, a deep, inherited layer of the human psyche that is not shaped by personal experience, but is instead a universal reservoir of latent memories and patterns of thought, which he called archetypes. Think of these archetypes not as specific images, but as fundamental psychological templates, hardwired tendencies to experience and conceptualize the world in certain ways. They are the psychic equivalent of instincts. Just as a bird is born with an innate instinct to build a nest, humans are born with innate, pre-existing forms for understanding concepts like the mother, the hero, the trickster, and crucially, the divine. The symbols of the first sky religion, Jung would argue, are the natural, spontaneous expression of these deep psychic archetypes projected onto the external world. The sky, in its vastness and power, provided the perfect canvas for the human psyche to project these internal patterns. Jung identified several key archetypes that align perfectly with our celestial symbols. The most prominent is the archetype of the self, which represents the unified consciousness and unconsciousness of an individual. The psyche is total personality and the ultimate goal of psychological integration and wholeness. The sun is the preeminent symbol for this archetype. Across dreams, myths, and art, the sun consistently appears as a symbol of the central source of life, consciousness, and the core of one's being. Its daily cycle of death and rebirth mirrors the psychological process of individuation, the journey toward realizing the self, which often involves navigating through darkness and difficulty to achieve a more enlightened state of being. Conversely, the moon is powerfully linked to the archetype of the anima, which represents the feminine aspect present in the unconscious of men, associated with intuition, emotion, and the world of dreams. It can also relate to the animus, the masculine aspect in women. The moon's cyclical, changing, and reflective nature perfectly captures the qualities of the unconscious. It does not generate its own light but reflects the light of the sun, just as the personal unconscious reflects the contents of the conscious mind. Its connection to tides and fluidity mirrors the ebb and flow of our emotions and subconscious depths. The star, for Jung, often symbolized the divine spark, the individual soul, or a guiding light in the darkness of the unknown, representing hope, destiny, and the fragmented pieces of the self waiting to be integrated. We don't need to look far to see these archetypes in action. They emerge spontaneously in our most private dreams and our most public myths. A person undergoing a period of intense personal growth might dream of a brilliant, radiant sun rising over a calm horizon, a classic symbol of the emerging self and a new state of psychic wholeness. Another, struggling to connect with their feelings, might dream of a full moon reflected in a still pool of water, suggesting a need to engage with their unconscious anima world. In modern media, these patterns are everywhere. In the Star Wars saga, the conflict between the light and dark sides of the Force is a quintessential archetypal drama. The sun-drenched planet of Tatooine and the celestial light of a lightsaber are modern sun symbols for consciousness and moral clarity, while the shadowy, lunar aspects of the Force represent the unconscious and its temptations. The entire hero's journey of Luke Skywalker is a voyage toward individuation. In Disney's The Lion King, Simba's ascent to Pride Rock to take his place as king is framed against a glorious rising sun, a clear visual metaphor for the realization of his true self and his rightful place in the great circle of life. These stories resonate not because they are original, but because they are ancient. They are tapping into the same archetypal wellspring that gave rise to the myths of Ra and Shamash. Jung himself spoke directly to this innate human tendency to project these internal archetypes onto the cosmos. He wrote, "The fact that the unconscious spontaneously personifies certain effectively toned contents in dreams is the reason why throughout human history, it has always been projecting these same contents into the sky as gods." He referred to this as the God image within the psyche, an archetype of the ultimate unity and meaning. For Jung, the long human history of worshipping sun gods and moon goddesses was not a primitive mistake, but a necessary stage in psychological development. Humanity was, in a sense, worshipping its own unfolding potential for consciousness and wholeness, using the sky as a mirror. We externalized the drama of the psyche because we did not yet have the psychological language to understand it as an internal process. The disappearance of the first sky religion from this perspective does not mean the death of these symbols but their internalization. We no longer build temples to the sun god. We embark on a journey of self-discovery. We no longer sacrifice to the moon goddess. We seek to integrate our unconscious through therapy and introspection. The symbols have not lost their power. Their stage has simply moved from the heavens to the human soul. This profound psychological depth, this innate, hardwired resonance, is precisely what makes these ancient symbols so incredibly potent and valuable in our modern world, especially for those who understand how to harness their power for persuasion and profit. This remarkable psychological power, this deep-seated archetypal resonance, has not gone unnoticed in the modern world's most powerful engine of influence, the marketplace. Corporations and advertisers, masters of tapping into the subconscious, have become the unwitting high priests of a new celestial religion, systematically harvesting the ancient symbols of the first sky religion to sell products, build trust, and craft brand identities. They understand, intuitively or through meticulous market research, that these forms speak a primal language that bypasses our logical minds and speaks directly to our deepest hopes and fears. In the glittering landscape of global commerce, the sun, the moon, and the stars have been given a new mission, no longer to guide souls to the afterlife, but to guide consumers to the checkout. The most straightforward application is in the energy sector, where the symbolism is almost too perfect to ignore. Countless companies, from multinational giants to local solar panel installers, instinctively reach for the sun logo. BP's former Helios logo, named after the Greek sun god, was a stylized sunburst of green and yellow petals, an attempt to position an oil and gas company as environmentally friendly and forward-looking, a promise that many critics argued was more symbolic than substantive. Similarly, nuclear energy facilities often use a stylized atom model that can easily be interpreted as a microcosm of a solar system, harnessing the sun's immense power here on Earth. The message is clear and potent. This company is a source of life, power, and clean, natural energy. It's a direct, if unconscious, invocation of Ra and Surya, promising to bring the benevolent, life-giving force of the sun into your home and your car's gas tank. The banking and insurance industries are another hotbed of solar symbolism, though the connection is more abstract. A company like Sun Life Financial uses a bright, cheerful sun in its logo to subliminally promise stability, reliability, and a bright future for your finances, associating the eternal, dependable return of the sun with the safety of your retirement savings. The radiating lines of a sunburst are a visual shorthand for growth, expansion, and positive outward energy, all qualities a financial institution desperately wants you to associate with its services. The star is perhaps the most versatile and widely used celestial symbol in commerce, its meaning shifting subtly depending on the context. The most universal application is the star rating system, a global language of quality and excellence that needs no translation. From Michelin restaurants to Amazon product reviews, a 5-star rating immediately communicates superiority, a modern echo of the stars that guided ancient navigators to safe harbor. It signifies that a product or service has been measured against a cosmic standard and found worthy. In the automotive world, a star can denote luxury and engineering excellence, most famously in the Mercedes-Benz logo. The 3-pointed star within a circle originally represented the company's ambition to dominate the land, sea, and air with its engines. For the consumer, however, it simply signifies prestige, quality, and a high-status purchase, a gleaming badge of success that carries the weight of celestial approval. For food brands, stars can imply a kind of magical, special quality. A cereal brand might put stars on its box to suggest it's magically delicious, tapping into the childhood wonder of wishing on a star. This commercial use takes a symbol that once represented distant worlds and divine beings and repackages it into a simple, instantly recognizable stamp of human achievement and desirability. This widespread commercial adoption, however, raises complex ethical questions about appropriation and dilution. When a sacred symbol is used to sell soft drinks or credit cards, what happens to its original power and meaning? This is the paradox of syncretism in the capitalist age. On one hand, this process ensures the symbol's survival and continued visibility on a scale the ancient priests could never have imagined. The sun disk is seen by billions of people every day, not carved on a temple wall, but on their grocery bags, their phone apps, and their television screens. On the other hand, this constant exposure in trivial contexts can drain the symbol of its numinous power, reducing a once sacred icon to a mere decorative clip art, a bland signifier of generic positive vibes. The halo, which in Christian art represented the direct emanation of divine grace, is now routinely used in advertising to denote anything that is new, improved, or simply glowing. A burger in a commercial might be depicted with a golden glow around it, a blatant co-opting of sacred light to stimulate appetite rather than piety. This is the ultimate disenchantment. The sacred is not rejected but trivialized, turned into a tool for manipulation in the service of profit. The ethical line becomes even blurrier when corporations use these symbols to greenwash their image or create a false sense of wellness. A company with a questionable environmental record might use a lush green logo featuring a sun and rolling hills to project an aura of ecological harmony. A processed food product packed with sugar might be branded with a cheerful, smiling sun and the words natural and wholesome, leveraging the sun's ancient association with life and health to sell something that is anything but. This is where the commercialization moves from simple appropriation to something more insidious, the use of deeply trusted, archetypal forms to deceive. It preys on the positive subconscious associations forged over millennia, leveraging our hardwired trust in the life giver to sell us something that may be harmful. The symbol's meaning becomes not just diluted but corrupted, weaponized against the very instincts it once helped to shape. Yet, to see this process only as a negative would be to oversimplify it. This commercial adaptation is also a testament to the symbol's incredible versatility and enduring power. The fact that a sun logo can feel equally at home on a temple, a flag, and a bottle of orange juice proves that these forms are not fragile relics. They are robust, multivalent tools of communication. Their journey from sacred altars to supermarket shelves is a strange and convoluted chapter in their long history, but it is not necessarily their final one. They continue to carry a whisper of their original meaning, a faint echo of the divine that even the most cynical marketing campaign cannot entirely erase. Every time we choose a product because its packaging feels trustworthy or because its star rating is high, we are, in a small way, participating in the latest evolution of an ancient human practice, looking to the symbols of the sky for guidance, assurance, and a promise of quality in an uncertain world. Yet, even as these ancient symbols are repurposed for commerce, a powerful counter-movement is emerging, one that seeks not to sell the sky, but to save it. In a fascinating twist of history, the very forces of modernity that disenchanted the cosmos are now fueling a profound re-sacralization of the heavens, driven by a growing environmental consciousness. This isn't a return to the polytheism of our ancestors, but a new, holistic understanding that recognizes the intrinsic value of a dark, star-filled night sky, not just for our ecosystems but for our souls. Modern eco-spirituality and global movements are leading a quiet revolution to reclaim our celestial heritage, blending cutting-edge science with a renewed sense of cosmic wonder to address the very practical crisis of light pollution. This movement represents a potential full-circle moment for humanity's relationship with the sky, suggesting that the path forward may require us to rediscover the reverence of the past. At the heart of this revival is the International Dark Sky Association and its global network of advocates. Their mission is startlingly simple yet profoundly radical: to protect the night skies for present and future generations by combating light pollution. This isn't merely an aesthetic concern for amateur astronomers. The science is unequivocal. Artificial light at night has devastating effects on the natural world. It disorients migratory birds who navigate by the stars, leading to fatal collisions with buildings. It disrupts the reproductive cycles of amphibians and the feeding patterns of nocturnal mammals. It confuses newly hatched sea turtles, drawing them away from the safety of the ocean and toward the deadly glare of coastal developments. For humans, the constant glow of artificial light disrupts circadian rhythms, suppressing the production of melatonin and contributing to a host of health issues, including sleep disorders, depression, and even an increased risk of certain cancers. The dark sky movement, therefore, frames a pristine night sky not as a luxury, but as a crucial component of planetary health, a shared resource as vital as clean air or fresh water. By advocating for responsible outdoor lighting, shielding fixtures, using warmer-colored LEDs, and turning off unnecessary lights, these activists are working to restore the natural cycle of day and night, a cycle that all life on Earth evolved under. In doing so, they are inadvertently re-establishing the conditions that made the first sky religion possible: a visible, awe-inspiring, and biologically essential connection to the cosmos. This practical advocacy is deeply intertwined with a growing sense of eco-spirituality. Annual events like Earth Hour, where millions of people around the globe turn off their non-essential lights for 1 hour, have evolved beyond a simple energy-saving gesture. They have become a powerful symbolic ritual, a collective pause to remember our place in a larger universe. When the lights of a major city like Sydney or Toronto dim, and the constellations gradually emerge from the orange haze, the experience is often described in deeply emotional and even spiritual terms. It is a moment of communal awe, a tangible reminder of what we have lost and what we stand to regain. This act of voluntary darkness is a form of secular worship, a modern-day solstice celebration that honors the rhythms of the planet and our dependence upon them. Environmental author and farmer Wendell Berry articulates this sentiment perfectly, arguing for a renewed ethic of connection. The care of the earth is our most ancient and most worthy, and after all our most pleasing responsibility. To cherish what remains of it and to foster its renewal is our only hope. For Berry and many others, this care extends beyond the soil to the sky above. To foster the renewal of the night is to cherish a fundamental part of the Earth's living system and our own cultural memory. Perhaps the most powerful engine for this celestial revival is the scientific community itself, particularly space agencies like NASA. In a beautiful paradox, NASA, a mission of scientific exploration which relies on the most advanced technology, has become one of the greatest generators of cosmic awe and spiritual reflection in the modern era. Through stunning imagery from the Hubble and James Webb Space Telescopes, we are granted access to vistas of creation more magnificent than anything our ancestors could have conceived. The pillars of creation, the deep field images revealing thousands of galaxies in a patch of sky the size of a grain of sand held at arm's length, these are not just data sets. They are windows into the sublime. They evoke a sense of wonder that is both scientific and deeply reverent. NASA public outreach actively cultivates this feeling, with scientists and astronauts often speaking in terms that border on the mystical. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell, upon returning from his Apollo 14 mission, described a profound epiphany, a sense of universal connectedness. He called it the overview effect, a cognitive shift in awareness reported by many astronauts who have seen the Earth from space, a tiny, fragile, blue marble floating in the vast blackness, devoid of borders and brimming with life. This perspective doesn't negate science, it complements it. It suggests that a full understanding of our place in the universe requires both the cold, hard data of physics and the warm, overwhelming feeling of awe that the data inspires. This blending of empirical discovery and heartfelt wonder is creating a new, evidence-based mythology for the 21st century, one where the Milky Way is both a collection of billions of stars and a river of light that can still stir the human soul. This revivalist trend, weaving together environmentalism, science, and spirituality, hints at a profound possibility, a resurgence of sky-centered reverence for a new age. We are not likely to restart sacrifices to the sun god Ra, but we are beginning to recognize that a life completely divorced from the cosmic cycles is a life impoverished. The movement to protect the night sky is at its core an acknowledgement that we need the stars. We need them for the health of our ecosystems, for the calibration of our own biological clocks, and for the nourishment of our inner lives. In relearning how to see the sky, we are remembering how to see ourselves as part of a larger, majestic whole. This modern celestial awareness offers a third way, a path beyond the old dichotomy of a sacred but superstitious sky and a disenchanted but mechanical one. It allows us to look up at a galaxy and appreciate its breathtaking beauty through the eyes of an artist, while simultaneously understanding its mind-bending scale through the equations of an astrophysicist. This integrated vision doesn't require a rejection of modernity, but rather a wiser application of it, using our technology not to blot out the heavens, but to understand them more deeply, to protect them more fiercely, and to ensure that every generation to come can still look up and feel that ancient, irresistible pull of the infinite. But even as we strive to reclaim the authentic night sky, a new layer of experience is being digitally superimposed upon it. Our relationship with the cosmos is undergoing another profound transformation. not through environmental change this time, but through technological mediation. We now carry planetariums in our pockets, with apps that can identify constellations by simply pointing our phones at the light-polluted haze above our cities. We can don virtual reality headsets and take a photorealistic tour of the solar system from our living rooms, or watch high-definition live streams from the International Space Station. This digital revolution offers unprecedented access to the heavens, but it also raises a poignant question. Does this technological interface ultimately mediate our experience, placing a screen between us and the sublime, or does it genuinely enhance our sense of celestial wonder by revealing depths invisible to the naked eye? On one hand, these tools can act as powerful interpreters, breaking down the barriers to understanding that the vastness of space can create. A beginner gazing at the night sky might see only a random scattering of stars, but an app like Star Walk or Skyview can overlay the precise outlines of constellations, connect the dots to reveal mythical figures, and provide detailed information about the distance, composition, and history of each pinpoint of light. This transforms an overwhelming spectacle into a navigable map, a classroom without walls. It democratizes knowledge that was once the exclusive domain of priests and specialized astronomers. Virtual reality takes this several steps further. Projects like the fully immersive experience, Titans of Space, allow users to feel the awe-inspiring scale of the solar system by shrinking them down to the size of a spacecraft and flying them past planets that loom like gigantic, beautiful worlds. You can witness the violent beauty of a solar flare erupting from the sun or stand on the dusty, rust-colored plains of Mars. These are experiences utterly impossible for direct human observation, and they can ignite a passion for astronomy that a textbook never could. In this sense, technology doesn't diminish wonder, it amplifies it by expanding the scope of what we can perceive and comprehend. Yet, there is a valid concern that this convenience comes at a cost. The act of looking up at the real sky in all its silent, impersonal grandeur is a deeply humbling and direct experience. There is no user interface, no algorithm curating the view. You are simply a living being confronting the infinite. This raw, unmediated encounter can trigger a profound emotional and philosophical response, the true essence of the sublime. When we instead view the cosmos through a smartphone screen, we risk reducing it to just another piece of digital content, another stream of information to be consumed and swiped past. The awe can become contingent on the technology itself. Furthermore, the very nature of these digital representations involves a degree of artistic license and compression. The colors in nebula photos are often enhanced to highlight scientific details. The scales in solar system models are drastically altered to fit on a screen. We are not seeing the true sky, but a curated, optimized version of it. This isn't a deception, but it does create a simulation that, no matter how beautiful, is one step removed from reality. The danger is that the perfect, vibrant, and convenient digital sky could make the faint, challenging, and authentic night sky seem less compelling by comparison. This technological mediation is rapidly evolving beyond education into the realm of experience and even commerce. Companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are pioneering the ultimate mediated celestial experience, space tourism. Their advertisements are masterclasses in modern sky symbolism, blending cutting-edge rocket science with the ancient language of transcendence and awe. They sell not just a flight, but a perspective-altering journey, promising customers the life-changing overview effect once reserved for astronauts. Here, technology is the ultimate gatekeeper, offering a direct physical encounter with the cosmos for those who can afford it, while the rest of us watch through mediated live streams. This creates a new kind of hierarchy of experience, where the most profound connection to the sky becomes a luxury good. The trajectory of our technological relationship with the heavens is a double-edged sword. It has the phenomenal power to educate, inspire, and make the incomprehensible accessible. Yet, it also holds the potential to insulate us from the raw, humbling power of the real thing, turning the infinite into just another app. The challenge for our era is to leverage these incredible tools as bridges to understanding, not as replacements for the simple, profound act of going outside on a clear night, turning off our screens, and looking up in quiet wonder at the ancient, star-dusted canvas above, remembering that the greatest technology for experiencing the sky will always be our own eyes, our own curiosity, and our own innate sense of awe. So how is it that these celestial patterns, stripped of their original sacred power, continue to exert such a profound influence on our daily lives, showing up in the very idioms we speak and the stories we tell our children? The answer lies in the deep, slow-moving river of cultural memory, a subconscious reservoir of images, stories, and associations that are passed down through generations, often without us even realizing we are participating in an ancient tradition. This isn't about a conscious decision to remember the sky gods. It's about the way certain symbols become so deeply embedded in the foundation of our culture that they become a permanent part of our psychological and linguistic architecture, shaping how we see the world and express ourselves within it. These symbols have achieved a kind of immortality, not in temples, but in the very fabric of our collective mind. We can witness this remarkable persistence most clearly in the language we use every day. Our speech is littered with fossilized fragments of the first sky religion, linguistic artifacts that reveal how thoroughly these celestial concepts are woven into our understanding of human experience. Consider the term lunatic, derived directly from the Latin luna for moon. For millennia, it was a widely held belief that the moon's cycles could influence not just the tides but the human mind, exacerbating mental states and triggering erratic behavior. While modern medicine has thoroughly debunked this as a cause of mental illness, the word remains firmly entrenched in our vocabulary as a descriptor for foolish or unpredictable behavior. Similarly, we describe an influential or rapidly successful person as a rising star, a phrase that would have made perfect sense to a Babylonian astrologer tracking the ascension of a planet. When we feel disoriented or confused, we say we are moonsick. We have sunny dispositions and face our darkest hours. A disastrous event is a rainy day. We wish upon a star for good fortune. These aren't just pretty metaphors, they are the ghostly echoes of a world where human fate was directly tied to the movements of the heavens. We continue to use this celestial language because it provides a powerful, intuitive shorthand for describing the most complex human emotions and situations, a testament to the sky's enduring role as our oldest and most reliable metaphor. This cultural embedding extends far beyond single words into the very structure of our most beloved stories and folklore. The archetypal hero's journey, as described by mythologists like Joseph Campbell, is itself a celestial map. The hero often begins in the ordinary world, receives a call to adventure, crosses a threshold into the unknown, faces trials and allies, and finally returns home transformed with a boon for his people. This narrative arc mirrors the journey of the sun. It sets out from the familiar world at dawn, travels through the perilous and unknown realm of the night, battles the forces of darkness, and is triumphantly reborn at sunrise, bringing the light and warmth that benefits the entire community. This solar pattern is the bedrock of countless myths, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Odysseus to the plot of virtually every modern Hollywood blockbuster. Our fairy tales, too, are saturated with this symbolism, The princess is often associated with the moon, beautiful, passive, and waiting to be rescued. The prince is the solar hero, active and brilliant, who slays the dragon of chaos, frequently symbolized by the darkness of a deep forest or a mountain cave. We tell these stories to our children not because we are consciously teaching them ancient astronomy, but because these celestial patterns feel inherently right and satisfying on a deep, subconscious level. They resonate with a rhythm that feels baked into the universe itself, a rhythm our ancestors first discerned in the sky above them. The mechanism for this incredible transmission is what sociologists and memory theorists call habit memory. Unlike deliberate historical memory, which requires active recollection of specific events, habit memory is the unconscious performance of ingrained practices and the use of ingrained symbols. It's the memory stored in our hands when we perform a ritual, in our tongues when we speak a proverb, and in our hearts when we feel a sense of awe during a solstice celebration, even if we no longer know the name of the god it was once meant to honor. The symbols of the first sky religion have become a form of habit memory for our entire culture. We no longer need to believe that the sun is a god to feel a collective sense of relief and joy as the days begin to lengthen after the winter solstice. We continue to decorate evergreen trees and light candles, ancient symbols of life's persistence and the returning sun, now wrapped in a modern holiday. We sing songs about the moon and write love songs under the stars, channeling that ancient sense of romantic longing and connection to something eternal. These practices and artistic expressions keep the symbols alive, transmitting them to the next generation not through dogma, but through feeling, aesthetics, and shared experience. They become part of the cultural air we breathe, invisible yet essential. This deep, subconscious retention underscores the irreplaceable role these celestial symbols play in the formation of human identity. They are more than just decorative holdovers, they are fundamental tools for meaning-making. In a world that can often feel random and chaotic, these ancient patterns provide a sense of order, continuity, and connection to something larger than ourselves. They offer a shared symbolic language that transcends individual cultures and historical periods, creating a subtle but powerful thread of common humanity. To lose these symbols would be to impoverish our imagination and sever a vital link to our collective past. Their persistence is a quiet, stubborn testament to the fact that while religions and empires rise and fall, the human need to find meaning in the vast, beautiful, and mysterious cosmos is a constant. It is a need first expressed by our ancestors gazing upward in wonder, and it continues to be expressed by us every time we use a forgotten celestial phrase or feel our spirits lift at the first light of dawn. Perhaps the most compelling evidence for the deep, shared roots of the first sky religion lies not in the isolated myths of a single culture, but in the astonishing parallels that emerge when we place these stories side by side across vast divides of geography and time. When we compare the mythologies of ancient Greece and Vedic India, for instance, separated by thousands of miles and developed by vastly different peoples, we find a recurring celestial character that is impossible to ignore: the sun riding across the sky in a magnificent chariot. In Greek mythology, this is the role of Helios, the radiant god who drives a golden chariot pulled by 4 fiery steeds named Pyrrhua, Eos, Ethon, and Phlegon, fire, dawn, blaze, and flame. Each day he begins his journey in the east, ascends to the zenith of the sky, and descends into the west, only to sail back around the world in a golden cup to begin again. The imagery is one of majestic, powerful, and predictable order. Now travel across the ancient world to the Indian subcontinent, and we meet Surya, the Hindu sun god. His story is strikingly familiar. Surya also drives a chariot across the heavens, a vehicle pulled by 7 horses, which represent the 7 days of the week or the 7 colors of sunlight revealed in a rainbow. His charioteer is Aruna, the personification of the dawn, who clears the path for the sun's brilliant arrival. The parallels are too specific to be mere coincidence. This is not just 2 cultures inventing a sun god. It is 2 cultures describing the same celestial phenomenon using an almost identical mythical vehicle. The chariot is a perfect metaphor, a human invention used to explain the divine mechanics of the sun's daily journey, a concept that clearly emerged from a common, ancient well of inspiration. This pattern of shared celestial storytelling extends far beyond the sun chariot. Consider the universal myth of a great flood, sent by displeased sky gods to cleanse the world of humanity's corruption. In the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, the hero Utnapishtim is warned by the god E to build a boat to survive the deluge unleashed by Enlil. In the Hebrew Bible, Noah receives his instructions from Yahweh. In Hindu scriptures, Manu is saved by the first avatar of Vishnu, Matsya, who appears as a fish to guide his ship through the cosmic waters. Even in the Americas, the Maya Popol Vuh tells of a flood sent by the Heart of Sky to destroy the first flawed wooden people. While the flood itself is a terrestrial event, its cause is consistently celestial, a decision made by gods residing in the heavens to reset creation. The symbolism of the axis mundi, the world center, is another global constant. The idea of a central mountain, tree, or pole connecting earth, heaven, and the underworld appears in virtually every ancient cosmology. For the Norse, it was Yggdrasil, the immense ash tree. In Siberia, shamanic traditions revered a world pole. In Aboriginal Australian mythology, ceremonial poles serve as a conduit for ascending to the sky world. The specific details vary, but the core architectural principle of the cosmos remains the same: a vertical axis around which reality is organized, providing a pathway for communication between the human and the divine. How do we explain these profound similarities? Comparative mythologists like Michael Witzel, a renowned Harvard scholar, argue that these parallels point to a common source: a single, original body of myths that spread across the globe as humans migrated out of Africa. Witzel calls this the Laurasian mythology, a hypothetical framework of stories that originated with early modern humans and was carried eastward across Asia and into the Americas, adapting and evolving with each new culture it touched, but retaining its fundamental skeletal structure. According to this theory, the sun chariot, the world flood, and the axis mundi are not independent inventions but rather distant, fragmented echoes of the very first stories our species ever told about the world around them. They are the durable, archetypal core of a narrative tradition that began when the first humans looked up at the sky and tried to make sense of the sun's journey, the violence of thunderstorms, and the vast, ordered beauty of the starry night. This doesn't mean every myth is identical. Local environments and histories acted like filters, coloring these stories with unique details. The sun might be pulled by reindeer in one northern tradition, or appear as a cunning trickster in another, but the underlying concern with the sun's power and its daily cycle remains a constant, universal theme. This universality powerfully reinforces the idea that these celestial symbols are not cultural inventions so much as they are innate expressions of the human experience. They emerged spontaneously from the same fundamental conditions of being human on this planet. We all share the same sun, the same moon, and the same basic psychological hardware. The human brain, wherever it developed, is wired to seek patterns, assign agency, and create narratives. Faced with the overwhelming spectacle of the sky, it was perhaps the most natural thing in the world to personify its forces, to project our own human experiences of riding in a cart or sailing in a boat onto the majestic journey of the sun. The shared origin of these myths suggests that the first sky religion was never a formal doctrine that spread. It was the default setting of human consciousness when confronted with the cosmos. It was our collective first language for describing the numinous, a language we are still speaking today every time we feel a sense of awe at a sunset or find comfort in the familiar patterns of the stars. This deep, shared heritage means that when we look at the sun disk on an ancient Egyptian temple or hear a story about a celestial chariot from India, we are not looking at something foreign and ancient, but are catching a glimpse of our own deepest, most universal inheritance. For centuries, the story of humanity's earliest celestial faith was a ghost written in fading ink, a narrative pieced together from crumbling texts and fragmented artifacts. The grand temples of Egypt and the ziggurats of Mesopotamia offered clues, but they represented the sunset of the sky religion, not its dawn. The true origins, the very first stirrings of cosmic awe, seemed lost to the deep, silent stretches of prehistory. Then, almost overnight, the very ground beneath our feet began to speak, revealing secrets that have radically rewritten our understanding of the human journey and our primordial relationship with the heavens. Modern archaeology, armed with satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and a renewed sense of curiosity, is now pulling back the veil on a past far more sophisticated and spiritually profound than we ever imagined, bringing the whispers of the first sky religion back from the brink of silence. No single discovery has shaken the archaeological world quite like Gobekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey. Dated to a staggering 11,600 years ago, this complex of massive, T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in great stone circles was built by hunter-gatherers, a people we once assumed were incapable of such monumental, coordinated achievement. There are no signs of settlement, no houses, no granaries, no fields. This was not a village, it was a sanctuary, the world's first known temple, predating Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Great Pyramid by 7,000. The purpose of this awe-inspiring place is etched into its very stones. Many of the towering pillars are carved with a stunning array of animals: foxes, scorpions, vultures, and boars. But alongside these earthly creatures are clear celestial symbols. Prominent carvings of vultures, often shown with wings outstretched, may represent constellations. Most compellingly, one pillar, known as the Vulture Stone, features a series of symbols that researchers like Martin Sweatman have interpreted as a record of a catastrophic comet impact around 13,000 years ago, suggesting the builders were not just marking time but recording traumatic cosmic events that shaped their world. Gobekli Tepe forces us to confront a revolutionary idea, that it was not agriculture that led to religion, but perhaps a shared, complex spiritual belief, a religion centered on the sky and its mysteries, that first brought humans together to build, catalyzing the very dawn of civilization itself. This revolution in understanding is not confined to a single dig site. Across the globe, satellite technology and LiDAR light detection and ranging are acting as X-ray vision for archaeologists, revealing hidden landscapes invisible to the naked eye. In the dense jungles of Guatemala, LiDAR has peeled back the canopy to expose vast, sprawling Maya metropolises with thousands of previously unknown structures, all meticulously aligned with celestial events. It has revealed networks of roads and ceremonial centers that show a level of urban planning and astronomical integration we never attributed to the Maya. Similarly, in the deserts of Saudi Arabia, satellite imagery has uncovered immense, monumental stone structures called mustatils, dating back more than 7,000 years. These long, rectangular complexes, some over 1,500 feet in length, appear to have been used for ritual purposes, and their gates often open toward the rising sun, suggesting a form of solar worship on a massive scale that was entirely unknown just a decade ago. From space, we are discovering that the ancient world was far more connected, more sophisticated, and more universally attuned to the sky than our history books ever dared suggest. This flood of new data is breathing life into long-held theories about other ancient sites, allowing for breathtakingly accurate digital reconstructions. Take the famous Nebra sky disk discovered in Germany and dating to 1600 BCE. This bronze disk inlaid with gold symbols of the sun, moon, and stars was initially a mystery. Now, through precise archaeological analysis, we can understand it as one of the oldest known portable instruments for harmonizing the lunar and solar calendars. Digital reconstructions show how its arcs could have been used to calculate the solstices and the movements of the Pleiades star cluster, turning it from a curious artifact into a sophisticated astronomical tool held in the hands of a Bronze Age priest. Similarly, virtual reality now allows us to step inside a precisely reconstructed Newgrange passage tomb in Ireland on the winter solstice. We can experience the very moment lasting just 17 minutes, when a single shaft of sunlight penetrates the dark, 60-foot passage to illuminate the inner chamber, an event that 5,000 years ago would have been a powerful, visceral demonstration of the sun's triumph over darkness. These reconstructions are not just academic exercises, they are time machines granting us an emotional connection to the minds of our ancestors and a profound appreciation for their precise astronomical knowledge. This great rediscovery is more than an academic pursuit, it is a race against time. Every new piece of the puzzle underscores the fragility of this knowledge. Luther's urban expansion and the accelerating effects of climate change pose existential threats to these irreplaceable sites. The very permafrost that preserved sites in Siberia is melting. Rising sea levels threaten coastal ruins. The urgency to find, document, and protect these places has never been greater. Each site lost is a chapter of our shared human story erased forever, a lost connection to the moment we first looked up and saw meaning in the void. The work of modern archaeology, therefore, is a sacred duty of preservation. It ensures that the legacy of the first sky watchers, their awe, their ingenuity, and their hard-won understanding of the cosmos is not forgotten but serves as a permanent testament to the timeless human drive to seek our place among the stars. And so our journey across the millennia draws to a close. We began by gazing upward with our most ancient ancestors, sharing in their awe as they beheld a living, conscious sky, a cathedral without walls that served as humanity's first and most universal religion. We traced the slow, complex unraveling of this celestial faith, a disappearance not from a single cataclysm, but from a perfect storm of pressures. Environmental shifts, like the great droughts that shattered empires, broke the covenant of predictability that was the sky religion's very foundation. The rise of personalized, earth-bound deities offered a more intimate and controllable divine relationship, while political centralization saw emperors and kings co-opt the sun's power for their own legitimacy, suppressing the old decentralized ways. Finally, the dual revolutions of written scripture and scientific discovery relocated divine authority first to the page and then to the laboratory, systematically disenchanting the cosmos and leaving its symbols spiritually orphaned. Yet, as we've seen, those symbols refuse to die. They possess a breathtaking resilience, an ability to migrate and adapt that speaks to their profound depth in the human psyche. They are the ultimate survivors, the axis mundi, the world tree that once connected the shaman to the spirit world, now reaches for the sky as the spire of a cathedral or the gleaming steel of a skyscraper. The radiant sun disk of Aten and Ra now shines on the flags of nations, representing not a god, but the dawning light of liberty and progress. The moon's cycles, once the domain of goddesses like Sin, now structure our months and inspire our art, while the stars that guided Polynesian voyagers now help us navigate the complexities of modern life through horoscopes and apps. These icons are a bridge, a living archaeology of the human spirit that connects our high-tech, secular present to our mystical, star-gazing past. They are the subtle, often subconscious, threads that weave us into the vast tapestry of human experience. Understanding this legacy does more than satisfy historical curiosity. It fundamentally enriches our appreciation for the creativity and resilience of our species. It reveals that our drive for meaning is so powerful that we will repurpose the most sacred forms to fit new worldviews, ensuring that a sense of wonder and connection persists even when the original faith has faded. We are storytelling creatures, and the oldest stories we ever told were written in the stars. To recognize the celestial origin of the spire, the halo, or the sun logo is to add a layer of profound depth to our everyday reality. It transforms a city skyline from a forest of glass and steel into a conversation with our ancestors, a silent stone prayer that has been ongoing for tens of thousands of years. So the next time you step outside, I encourage you to take a moment and simply look up. Gaze at the sky, whether it's the brilliant blue of day or the deep, light-polluted orange of a city night. Try to see it not just as empty space or a navigational hazard, but as the original canvas of human myth. The same sun that inspired pharaohs and terrified Babylonians still warms your face. The same moon that governed ancient calendars and symbolized the unconscious still pulls at the tides of your imagination. These persistent symbols are all around us, waiting to be noticed. I'd love to hear what you discover. Have you seen an axis mundi in your city's architecture? Noticed a solar symbol in a surprising place? Share your thoughts and findings in the comments below. Let's continue this exploration together. If you've enjoyed this journey into the hidden layers of our history and the secrets hidden in plain sight, there are so many more mysteries to uncover. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the forgotten stories that shape our world. Until then, keep looking up.